Chapter 19. Yi Tianzong nodded his head in satisfaction. In this world, was there anyone more suitable than him to guide Ling Xinyue on her martial path? Of course there wasn't, but Yi Tianzong wouldn't say it out loud. It would depend on whether Ling Xinyue could think of it or not. However, Yi Tianzong believed that Ling Xinyue would definitely think of it and come to him. Following which, Yi Tianzong removed the suppression on Li Meng and Li Han from the Xian New Temple. Looking at the two people who were panting with anger, Yi Tianzong calmly said, "There's no need to be angry. I naturally have my reasons for doing this. I don't mind telling you that in the future, the profound spirit world will gradually return to the peak of the ancient era. At that time, there will be many powerful hidden holy lands, aristocratic families, and sects. Xinyue's physique is special. As her cultivation increases, once her physique is activated, with your Xian New Temple's strength and foundation, you won't be able to protect her. At that time, it will be too late for you to cry. Don't think that I'm just trying to scare you. There's no medicine for regret in this world. I hope that your Xian New Temple will not obstruct any of Xinyue's actions. I can represent the Haoran Sword sect to promise that as long as you don't cross the bottom line, you will always take care of the Xian New Temple. Otherwise, you won't be able to stop me. When the time comes, even if I have to destroy your Xian New Temple, I won't hesitate. Remember to tell your Xian New Temple's temple master what I said. I never joke and always do what I say." Ignoring the ugly expressions on Li Meng and Li Han's faces, Yi Tianzong turned to Ling Xinyue and said, "Your Xian New Temple's current situation isn't very good. This time, my Haoran Sword sect will help you get rid of the danger. You can't avoid fighting with Jinbu Gate, Demon Sword sect, and Shura sect. Remember to pay attention to your own safety. I will instruct the elders and disciples to protect you." After speaking, Yi Tianzong turned into a gust of wind and left the Haoran Hall. Ling Xinyue watched as Yi Tianzong left and felt a sweet feeling in her heart. Her beautiful face couldn't help but reveal a happy smile, stunning everyone in the hall. Yi Haoran happily patted the armrest of the chair. "Good boy, it worked. This method of picking up girls is amazing." Su Mingxin was also happy that she didn't have to worry about her son's marriage anymore. The merit, administration, and examination hall masters praised their young sect master's domineering aura and charm. The Xian New Temple's Li Meng and Li Han were frightened and angry. They couldn't help but ask, "Sect Master Yi, your young sect master is so overbearing and rude. He ignored the rules of our Xian New Temple and wanted to take over our Xian New Temple's young sect master. Are you not going to do anything about it?" Facing the Xian New Temple's questioning, Yi Haoran didn't say anything. The administration hall master, Zhao Xian, immediately took the lead and said rudely, "You can't say it like that. Don't think that we don't know. Didn't you bring your young sect master here to form a marriage alliance with our Haoran Sword sect? You decided to break the rules of your Xian New Temple, and you still have the nerve to question our young sect master. Besides, our young sect master is talented and has been a peerless genius for thousands of years. Do you think he needs to fool you? I already said that it's because your young sect master is special. Once exposed, your Xian New Temple's strength can't protect her at all. You can only blame your Xian New Temple for not having enough knowledge and strength. If you don't have enough strength, you're asking for your own destruction. Otherwise, do you think our Haoran Sword sect's young sect master has the leisure to play with you? This is our Haoran Sword sect. If it were any other super sect, who would talk reason with you and agree to support your Xian New Temple, they would have taken action long ago. Is it because we've been too good to your Xian New Temple and gave you the illusion that our Haoran Sword sect is easy to bully? Anyway, no matter what your Xian New Temple thinks, as long as our young sect master gives the order, our Haoran Sword sect's hundreds of thousands of people will definitely fight for our young sect master at all costs." Zhao Xian, who had been learning from Yi Tianzong and was now promoted by Yi Tianzong to be the lord of the administrative hall, had long become Yi Tianzong's confidant. Now, in the face of the Xiannu Temple's questioning, as Yi Tianzong's father and the sect master of the Haoran sword sect, Yi Haoran didn't know how to answer. However, he didn't have so many scruples and didn't hesitate to talk back. Although he had scruples about Ling Xinyue's identity as Yi Tianzong's woman and he couldn't be too arrogant and despotic, he didn't hide his threat to the Xiannu Temple at all. Li Meng and Li Han of the Xiannu Temple were both surprised and angry by Zhao Xian's words. They were surprised because they didn't expect their original plan to be seen through, and angry because Zhao Xian's blatant threat put them in an awkward position. On the other hand, on the Haoran sword sect's side, Merit Hall Master Wang Li and Exam Hall Master Lin Chen immediately echoed Zhao Xian's words, expressing the determination of the Haoran sword sect. Yi Haoran and Su Mingxin looked at Zhao Xian with satisfaction and nodded slightly. No wonder he was supported by Tianzong. At the critical moment, he would come up with a plan. It was time to beat the Xiannu Temple's people and let them recognize the reality and the dignity of the Haoran sword sect. At the same time, they could vent their anger. In this negotiation, it seemed that the people of the Xiannu Temple had discovered that compensating the Haoran sword sect for the elixirs was more beneficial to the Haoran sword sect. In fact, it was a choice that the Haoran sword sect had made after discussion. As a super sect, the Haoran sword sect's style of doing things tended to be the style of a gentleman. However, it was not lacking in the style of Jianghu that killed decisively and sought revenge for the smallest grievance. What it hated the most was betrayal. In the hundreds and thousands of years that the Haoran sword sect and the Xiannu Temple had been on good terms, the Haoran sword sect had always taken care of the Xiannu Temple. Even when the Xiannu Temple was at war with the Haoran sword sect, the Haoran sword sect would try their best to take care of the Xiannu Temple. Beautiful women were generally the source of trouble. Therefore, the Haoran sword sect was under a lot of pressure from all sides and made many enemies for no reason. However, more than 30 years ago, when the Haoran sword sect was attacked, the Xiannu Temple ignored the alliance between the two sides and did not receive any support from the Xiannu Temple for 10 days because of the pressure from Zhenbu Gate. This really made the Haoran sword sect bitterly disappointed and violated the bottom line of the Haoran sword sect. How could the Haoran sword sect just apologize and compensate the Xiannu Temple for violating the bottom line of the Haoran sword sect? The Haoran sword sect had plenty of Xiannu Temple and did not lack Xiannu Temple. The reason why they only apologized and compensated the Xiannu Temple and forgave the Xiannu Temple and signed the alliance again was because of the hundreds and thousands of years of relationship between the two sides. In such a long period of time, many disciples of the Xiannu Temple married into the Haoran sword sect. It was not easy to break off the relationship. On the other hand, the Haoran sword sect also had their own plans. After the betrayal, even if the two sides signed the alliance again, they would definitely not be able to return to their previous relationship. The Haoran sword sect would also not work hard to take care of the Xiannu Temple. Under Yi Tianzong's suggestion, as he and the Haoran sword sect made their moves in the future, the profound spirit world would gradually recover its vitality. Various inheritances and powers would also appear. With the foundation and strength of the Xiannu Temple, sooner or later, they would not be able to hold on and be annexed. Rather than letting others take advantage of them, it was better to use the alliance now to slowly nibble away at the Xiannu Temple. This time, they sent more people to support the Xiannu Temple. On one hand, they could let the disciples who had not experienced actual combat gain experience and accumulate merit points. On the other hand, they could let the Haoran sword sect's disciples recruit more disciples of the Xiannu Temple. The Xiannu Temple was full of women, and the Haoran sword sect's female disciples were obviously much fewer than the male disciples. Marriage was a problem. Leaving the Xiannu Temple's great resources and not actively using them was simply a waste. Mainly because of these two considerations, The Haoran sword sect seemed to have easily forgiven the Xian Nu Temple. However, this did not mean that they did not want to teach them a lesson and vent their anger. Chapter 20. Their original plan was to say a few harsh words at the beginning of the discussion with the Xian Nu Temple about the purpose of this trip, to vent their dissatisfaction from being betrayed, and to knock the Xian Nu Temple down a notch. They didn't expect that the Xian Nu Temple's Li Meng would directly admit her mistake and lay her cards on the table, making them unable to vent their anger. As a result, the Xian Nu Temple's administrative hall master, Zhao Xian, had fiercely rebuked them, which made them very angry. They finally vented their anger. The atmosphere in the Haoran Hall became tense with the words of the several hall masters. As the sect master, Yi Haoran had vented his anger and achieved his goal of knocking the Xian Nu Temple down. It was time to come out and save the situation. So he coughed lightly and said to Zhao Xian and the other hall masters seriously, "Well, now that the Xian Nu Temple and our sect have formed an alliance, we are allies. Your words are a bit too much. In the future, don't mention such things again, or you will be severely punished." Zhao Xian, Wang Li, and Lin Chen tacitly stood up and said, "Yes, sect master, we know our mistakes." Seeing the three admit their mistakes, Yi Haoran nodded with satisfaction, and then said to Li Meng and Li Han, who were still angry, "Two elders, my sect's people were too aggressive with their words just now. Here, I apologize on behalf of them. Please rest assured that our Haoran sword sect will not fight with our allies for no reason. As for the matter of my son and niece, since you have this intention from the beginning, I think it's better to let nature take its course. Both sides won't interfere, and let the younger generation make their own choice. No matter what the final result is, it's their own choice, and they can't blame others. What do you think?" Yi Haoran tried to smooth things over, but the hidden meaning in his words was that he did not hesitate to support his son. After all, the result was obvious. The young master of the Xian Nu Temple in front of him was obviously in his son's hands, and could not escape. Li Meng and Li Han were both over 100 years old. Of course they could tell. Although he was angry, who asked the Xian Nu Temple to be weak. For the sake of the Xian Nu Temple's safety, he had no choice but to lower his head. Otherwise, if he stubbornly refused, the Haoran sword sect's support would definitely be in vain. He and the others would have made a wasted trip and completely cut off the opportunity to continue being friends with the Haoran sword sect. Sighing bitterly and helplessly in her heart, Li Meng said in a stiff tone, "Well, for the sake of the relationship between your sect and my Xian Nu Temple, I agree on behalf of the Xian Nu Temple." The hidden meaning in his words was that if it was not for the sake of the Xian Nu Temple's safety, they would definitely not agree. He was implying that the Haoran sword sect was taking advantage of the situation and was not doing things properly. Yi Haoran, who understood his meaning, smiled faintly and did not care. He continued, "In that case, my Haoran sword sect will now prepare the manpower. Everyone, please rest first. Tomorrow, my Haoran sword sect disciples will follow you back to the Xian Nu Temple to resolve the crisis of the Xian Nu Temple." Everything was a foregone conclusion. Li Meng and Li Han of the Xian Nu Temple could only bring the silent Ling Xinyue back to their resting place, pack their luggage, and wait quietly for tomorrow. In the face of the silent Ling Xinyue, Li Meng and Li Han, as the grand elders of the Xian Nu Temple, finally sighed helplessly and did not say anything. The most important thing now was to rescue the Xian Nu Temple, which was in a critical situation. This problem should be left to the temple master to worry about. Soon, the next day arrived. The 50,000 disciples and dozens of elders selected by the Haoran sword sect had already gathered in the vast square. The 50,000 Haoran disciples, who already knew the purpose of this trip, lined up neatly in high spirits. Their soaring momentum fiercely shocked the people of the Xian Nu Temple. Looking at the neat rows of Haoran disciples below, Yi Haoran said with satisfaction. His clear voice rang in everyone's ears. "The purpose of my Haoran sword sect this time is to rescue our ally, the Xiannu Temple, from the crisis. I don't need to say anything else. I only have one request, and that is to pay attention to your safety. Under the condition that you protect yourselves, ruthlessly teach the Zhenbu Gate, the Demon Sword Sect, and the Shura Sect a lesson. Let them pay with their blood and show the might of my Howren. Let's go. After saying that, the 50,000 disciples of the Howren Sword Sect, led by dozens of elders, followed the people of the Xiannu Temple and left Tiangang Peak, heading towards the Xiannu Temple. Before leaving, Ling Xinyue of the Xiannu Temple couldn't help but look back in the direction of the Howren Sword Sect, hoping to find the figure in her heart. However, in the end, she didn't see him. Protect yourself well and strive to cultivate to the peak of Wuzong as soon as possible. The days ahead won't be peaceful. If you have any difficulties, go to the elders of the Howren Sword Sect. They will protect you. Just as Ling Xinyue was feeling disappointed, a voice like a breeze entered her ears. Her dim eyes instantly flashed with a bright radiance. I will come and find you. Murmuring softly, Ling Xinyue followed the group and left Tiangang Peak, disappearing into the distance. On the wide and flat cement road, the group of 50,000 people from the Howren Sword Sect and the Xiannu Temple moved quickly in a grandiose manner. There was no end in sight. Other than the Xiannu Temple and a small number of Howren Sword Sect disciples, most of the people of the Howren Sword Sect were sitting on a long carriage. This long carriage was made by Yi Tianzong according to the appearance of the bus on Earth in his first life. He modified the carriage in the profound spirit world. The material was an extremely hard iron bell wood that was unique to the profound spirit world. Long wooden benches were installed around the carriage, and there were windows. The carriage still had 4 wheels, but it was pulled by 4 horses. One carriage could seat 30 people. At this moment, in one of the carriages, an elite disciple of the martial master realm said, "Did everyone know that we are going to the Xiannu Temple this time to help them out? The young sect master also gave us 2 missions. The first is to pay attention to the Xiannu Temple young sect master, who has taken a fancy to the young sect master. The second is to abduct as many disciples of the Xiannu Temple as we can." Another disciple of the martial master realm said, "Hey, how could we not know? I heard that the young sect master specially emphasized that we can abduct as many disciples as we want. If there are any problems, he will take responsibility. In my opinion, our young sect master is really righteous. He knows that we don't have many female disciples in the sect, so he asked us to think of a way from the Xiannu Temple. It is said that the female disciples of the Xiannu Temple are all carefully selected. They are all very beautiful." When he said this, everyone in the carriage showed an expression that said, "You know what I mean." Similar scenes appeared in the other carriages. The disciples of the Howren Sword Sect couldn't wait to rush to the Xiannu Temple and see the beauty of the Xiannu Temple's disciples. Thousands of miles away in the Xiannu mountain range, on the steep and beautiful Xiannu Peak, all the higher-ups of the Xiannu Temple gathered in the Xiannu Palace. The Xiannu Temple and the Howren Sword Sect were the same. The headquarters of the entire sect was located on the outskirts of the Xiannu mountain range, the main peak of the Xiannu mountain range, Xiannu Peak. The Xiannu mountain range was famous for its beauty. In the area with a radius of thousands of miles, there were countless beautiful mountains. Under the influence of nature, it had a gentle and tranquil atmosphere. It was naturally suitable for a female sect to be located in. The Xiannu Palace was the meeting place of the Xiannu Temple. It was spacious and decorated beautifully. It didn't lose its solemn and dignified aura. It was a beautiful place with beautiful scenery. In the Xiannu Palace, the palace master of the Xiannu Temple, Zi Yunxian, was sitting on a white jade lotus chair. She was wearing a light purple dress with lotus patterns on it. She had a graceful and mature bearing. On her cold and flawless face, her phoenix eyes were like the autumn water. Her long hair was tied up and she was constantly emitting a holy and cold temperament. At this moment, Zi Yunxian was holding a piece of paper in her right hand. There was only a simple sentence on the paper. It said, "After negotiations, we have formed an alliance with the Howran Sword sect. The price is 25% of the elixirs and materials. We have sent 2 of Wuzong's peak experts to lead dozens of elders and 50,000 disciples to provide support." This simple sentence caused Zi Yunxuan's cold face to reveal a beautiful smile, as if she was relieved of a heavy burden. Looking at the various elders, Zi Yunxian opened her red lips and said, "Everyone, I have just received news from Elder Li Meng. After negotiations, our Xian New Temple has paid 25% of our elixirs and materials to appease the dissatisfaction of the Howran Sword sect. We have also formed an alliance with the Howran Sword sect once again. Now, the Howran Sword sect has sent 2 of Wuzong's peak experts to lead dozens of elders and 50,000 disciples to provide support. They should arrive in about 5 days." Chapter 21. Hearing this news, the heavy atmosphere in the Xian Nu Palace instantly lightened up. Most of the higher-ups in the Xian Nu Temple heaved a sigh of relief. However, when the forest is big, there are all kinds of birds. As a super sect with thousands of years of history, although the Xian Nu Temple's strength was the weakest among the super sects, there were still different factions in the palace. Therefore, the news that was supposed to make everyone happy still had someone standing out to pour cold water on it. Humph! How did the 2 elders, Li Meng and Li Han, negotiate for the 25% of the elixirs and materials collected by our Xian Nu Temple? They actually agreed to such a huge price. They really have ulterior motives. They don't care about the interests of our Xian Nu Temple. A woman who was sitting slightly lower than Zi Yunxian said. She was wearing a green robe and had a mean face. Her words were harsh and arrogant. This person was the Vice Palace Lord of the Xian Nu Temple, Lin Gu. Every super sect had a Vice Sect Lord. However, the Vice Sect Lord of the Howran Sword sect had all been eliminated by Yi Tianzong. Even the position of Vice Sect Lord was removed. Lin Gu's cultivation was 1 realm lower than Zi Yunxian, who was in the middle stage of Wuzong. She was only in the early stage of Wuzong. Both of them were about the same age. However, Lin Gu was narrow-minded. She was not convinced by Zi Yunxian and always went against her. Until Zi Yunxian became the Palace Lord of the Xian Nu Temple and Lin Gu became the Vice Palace Lord, Lin Gu's resentment had turned into deep hatred. Zi Yunxian was the most outstanding disciple of the Xian Nu Temple. She first became the young Palace Lord and then the Palace Lord. Naturally, she had outstanding wisdom and foresight. She was very clear about the situation of the Xian Nu Temple. She understood the awkward position of the Xian Nu Temple. Therefore, she always wanted to be on good terms with the Howran Sword sect. They should be allies and help each other. However, Lin Gu was the Vice Palace Master of Xian Nu Temple. He was narrow-minded and he was not convinced by Zi Yunxian. Thus, he did not think too much about it. As long as it was something that Zi Yunxian agreed with, even if it was beneficial to the Xian Nu Temple as a whole, she would not hesitate to oppose it. She had completely placed her personal grudges and personal interests above the Xian Nu Temple. The reason why Lin Gu was so mean and arrogant and did not care about the interests of the Xian Nu Temple. He was still stable in his position as the Vice Palace Master. This was because Lin Gu's ancestor, who had reached the Marquis Wu realm, was sleeping in the secret realm of the Xian Nu Temple. During the last battle between the righteous and demonic forces, he had awakened to protect the foundation of the Xian Nu Temple. In addition, Lin Gu's Lin family was a famous family in the Xian Nu Temple. Her aunt was once married to a powerful elder of the Zhenbu Gate. Therefore, Lin Gu's position as the Vice Palace Master was secretly supported by the Zhenbu Gate. Compared to Lin Gu, Zi Yunxuan's background was not as good as Lin Gu's. She relied on her own hard work and wisdom to pass through many tests and stood out. She also did not have an ancestor who was sleeping in the secret realm. On the other hand, Wu Zongjing did not have the qualifications to sleep in the secret realm to prolong his life. Therefore, since the great change of the world 5,000 years ago, the vitality of the world had weakened. Especially in the recent few hundred years, when Wu Zongjing had become the peak of the martial arts world, the previous palace masters of the Xian New Temple either died of old age or died in the battle between the righteous and demonic forces. The previous Xian New Temple palace master died in the battle between the righteous and demonic forces. Therefore, compared to Lin Gyue, Zi Yunxian, who lacked support and backing, could be said to have a difficult life in the Xian New Temple. Previously, when the Haoran Sword sect was ambushed and besieged, Zi Yunxian advocated for the Haoran Sword sect to provide support even if the Zhenbu Gate was pressuring them. This was because Zi Yunxian was very clear that once the Haoran Sword sect suffered heavy losses, they would not be able to take care of anything else. Then, the pressure that the Xian New Temple had to bear would all fall on her head. Even with the help of the Haoran Sword sect, they would still be oppressed. Once they lost the support of the Haoran Sword sect, the Xian New Temple would definitely be in a difficult situation. However, even though Zi Yunxian had clearly explained the pros and cons, the elders and disciples of Zi Yunshuan's faction all voiced their support. However, Lin Gyue, who had long hated Zi Yunxian, completely ignored them. He used the pressure from the Zhenbu Gate as an excuse to pester them endlessly. He firmly refused to support the Haoran Sword sect. In the end, even the neutral faction of the Xian New Temple was persuaded by Lin Gyue. Thus, the matter of supporting the Haoran Sword sect came to an end. However, as the Haoran Sword clan suffered heavy losses and recuperated in a low-key manner for decades, the situation of the Mystic Maiden Palace could be said to have been deteriorating. They had been targeted and suppressed by the forces of the righteous and demonic sections. In particular, as the strength of the Mystic Maiden Palace continued to weaken over the years, the suppression that was originally secretly suppressed had become blatant and unscrupulous. Seeing that the situation was getting worse and getting out of control, the people of the Xian New Temple could no longer sit still. They no longer agreed with Lin Gyue's idea. Instead, they supported the suggestion of the palace master, Zi Yunxian. They sent the two supreme elders who supported Zi Yunxian and the young palace master, Ling Xinyue, to the Haoran Sword sect to re-establish the alliance. The Xian New Temple, who had always understood the way the Haoran Sword sect did things, naturally knew that the betrayal of the alliance would not be easily appeased by the Haoran Sword sect's dissatisfaction. Therefore, they were already prepared in their hearts. They were even prepared to break the rules and marry the young palace master. However, according to the information from the palace master, Zi Yunxian, they had to pay a price of 25% of the elixirs and materials. Was this a high price? The people of the Xian New Temple, who did not understand the situation of the Haoran Sword sect, would naturally think that this price was worth it. After all, if the elixirs were not stored for a long time, they would become ordinary elixirs. Using some impractical elixirs in exchange for the support of the Haoran Sword sect was a price that most of the people of the Xian New Temple were willing to agree to. It was even better than what they had expected. Therefore, in the face of Lin Gyue's unreasonable pestering and distorting of right and wrong, a supreme elder who was wearing a white brocade robe could not help but refute. Using 25% of impractical elixirs and materials in exchange for the Haoran Sword sect's alliance is a very reasonable price. What's wrong with this? Could it be that you can think of a better way than this? You're the one who's trying to stir up trouble and stir up trouble. I think you're the one who doesn't care about the interests of the Xian New Temple. Are you still thinking of giving the disciples of the Xian New Temple to the Zhenbu Gate? Lin Gyue did not expect that the Supreme Elder, who had always been relatively neutral, would refute her so directly. This made her very angry. Before she could say anything, the Supreme Elder continued rudely, don't think that you can do whatever you want just because you have the support of the Zhenbu Gate. The Xian New Temple was not established for you alone. In the past, because of you, we became enemies with the Haoran sword sect, causing the Xian Nu temple to become weaker and weaker. We had no choice but to use your method to feign civility with the Zhenbu Gate. Now that the Haoran sword sect's support is about to arrive, there's no need for you to use a high-sounding excuse to betray the disciples and interests of the Xian Nu temple. Don't even think about putting your personal grudges above the Xian Nu temple's. If it wasn't for your ancestor in the secret territory, what qualifications do you have to be the vice palace master? Such a sharp reprimand not only made Lin Gue very angry and unprepared, but even Zi Yunxian and the others were also very surprised. They did not understand why the Supreme Elder, Li Qingshi, who had always been neutral, suddenly changed her attitude. She did not care about Lin Gue's face at all. Every word she said hit Lin Gue's vital point. Every word she said was simply irreconcilable. As the palace master, Zi Yunxian was shocked for a moment before she reacted. She remembered the identity of the Supreme Elder, Li Qingshi. The Supreme Elder, Li Qingshi, was also born in a scholarly family in the Xian Nu temple. Her family's strength was not comparable to Lin Gue's family. However, he had an elder sister, Li Qingyao, who was also an outstanding disciple in the Xian Nu temple. However, she was married to the young sect leader of the Haoran sword sect, Yi Haoran. Now, she was the mother of the sect leader of the Haoran sword sect, Yi Haoran. Based on the grudge between the Haoran sword sect and the Zhenbu Gate, Li Qingshi definitely did not want to get along with Lin Gue, who was supported by the Zhenbu Gate. However, if it was not an important matter in the Xian Nu temple, the Supreme Elder was not allowed to participate in the decision-making. Previously, when they were deciding whether to support the Haoran sword sect, Li Qingshi did not participate in the decision because she was in seclusion to break through to the next realm. The neutral faction that was on the same side as her did not know about her elder sister's matter. Without her leadership, they were also persuaded by Lin Gue. When she came out of seclusion, everything was settled. Li Qingshi, who knew that the matter was settled, did not say anything because the Haoran sword sect had suffered heavy losses. She endured it silently. Chapter 22. Li Qingshi, who had endured silently, continued to maintain her neutral role in the Xian Nu temple. On the surface, she did not participate in the battle between Zi Yunxian and Lin Gue. However, in reality, she had secretly sabotaged Lin Gue's plans several times to prevent Zi Yunxian from being in a disadvantageous position. As for her sister Li Qingyao's marriage to the Haoran sword sect, the two sisters' master had the intention to help them. After some manipulation, Li Qingyao left the Xian Nu temple. After another year, she quietly married Yi Yuanshan. Therefore, not many people in the Xian Nu temple knew about it. Coincidentally, the previous palace master of the Xian Nu temple knew about it and told Zi Yunxian about it. However, Li Qingshi had always been very neutral. Lin Gue had also been constantly opposing her. This made Zi Yunxian very annoyed. Over time, Zi Yunxian had forgotten about this matter. If she did not hear the news today that the Haoran sword sect had sent a strong force to help Zi Yunxian would not have remembered that Li Qingshi had such a relationship with the Haoran sword sect. After understanding the reason, Zi Yunxian could not help but feel relieved. Her mood improved a lot. Her cold and charming red lips curled up into a beautiful arc. It seemed that the battle between her and Lin Gue would not be so difficult in the future. All these years, Lin Gue had relied on the support of the Zhenbu Gate and the influence of her ancestors. She had always had the upper hand in the battle with Zi Yunxian. When had she ever been reprimanded so mercilessly? She was already narrow-minded. She was so angry that she could not say anything. Because of the atmosphere, her face became distorted. She looked at Li Qingshi with hatred. Looking at Lin Gue, who was staring at her with hatred, Li Qingshi did not care at all. She continued to say mercilessly, "What are you looking at? Am I wrong? You are such a narrow-minded person. How many disciples of the Xian Nu temple have you betrayed? You are not worthy to be the vice-palace master of the Xian Nu Temple. After speaking about Lin Gue, Li Qingshi changed the topic and said, I agree with Elder Li Meng and Elder Li Han's negotiation. Since the Haoran Sword Clan's support is already on the way, we should also prepare to receive the people of the Haoran Sword Clan. The true martial sect, the Demon Sword Clan, and the Shura clan's conspiracy failed last time, and they definitely won't let it go easily. It won't be long before they attack again. Now, our Mystic Maiden Palace has to be on guard, and we can't take any chances. As for those who have been betraying the interests of the Mystic Maiden Palace, we can't count on them. Palace Lord, what do you think? Ziyunxian maintained a calm expression and said, Elder Li Qingshi's words are exactly what I want. Let's do it this way. When everyone returns, we can start preparing. Lin Gue, who was already flustered and exasperated, shouted, I object. I don't agree with this. However, the situation had changed. The neutral faction and Ziyunxuan's faction that obeyed Li Qingshi's orders had already surpassed Lin Gue's faction by a lot. Now that the Haoran Sword Sect's reinforcements were about to arrive, they no longer had to worry about the influence of Jinbu Gate. Other than Lin Gue's faction, no one cared about Lin Gue's shouting. Li Qingshi looked at Lin Gue, who was shouting, and said, Humph, uneducated idiot. Get out of my way. After saying that, Wuzong's peak chi aura seeped out from his body and suppressed Lin Gue, who was only at the initial stage of Wuzong. Then, he walked out of the Xian Nu Temple and left. Following Li Qingshi's departure, most of the people in the Mystic Maiden Palace also left. Only Lin Gue's faction and Lin Gue, who was suppressed by Li Qingshi's chi aura, were left. Lin Gue shouted angrily and smashed the chair beside him with his palm. You've gone too far. Li Qingshi, you old bastard. I'm going to kill you. I'm going to tear your body into pieces. Lin Gue's crazy appearance made the other elders who stayed in the Mystic Maiden Palace sigh. Their hearts were filled with faint regret. After the meeting, the elders led the disciples of the Xian Nu Temple to prepare for the upcoming changes and the people of the Haoran Sword Sect. When Lin Gue returned to his residence, he was still so angry that he broke the tables, chairs, and vases in his room. After venting his anger, he finally calmed down and said with a cold expression, I want all of them to die. The Xian Nu Temple must belong to me. You've finally made up your mind. If you had listened to me earlier, there wouldn't have been so much trouble. When are you going to do it? Suddenly, a man's voice came from behind Lin Gue. A middle-aged man wearing a blue brocade robe walked out of the room with a sinister expression and an evil aura. According to the fluctuation of his chi aura, he was at the late stage of Wuzong. He hugged Lin Gue from behind and caressed Lin Gue's body wantonly with both hands. A man at the late stage of Wuzong was hiding in the room of the deputy temple master of the Xian Nu Temple. If this news spread out, it would definitely shock the Xian Nu Temple. However, according to the man's tone and actions, it was obvious that he was very close to Lin Gue. Otherwise, he wouldn't be so unscrupulous. Lin Gue, who was in the arms of the middle-aged man, did not resist at all. She let out a comfortable moan, but then she said in a cold voice, Get all the people ready, we will take action the day after tomorrow. There are still 5 days before the people of the Haoran Sword Clan arrive. I will put the muscle-weakening powder in their food. As for the rest of the martial ancestor realm people, the people of your true martial sect should be enough to deal with them. When the time comes, remember what you promised me. I want to be the palace lord of the mysterious Lady Palace. Also, Ziyunxian and Li Qingshi, those two bitches, I want to personally torture them and let them suffer all kinds of humiliation, so that they would rather die than live. It turned out that the sinister-looking middle-aged man was sent by the true martial sect. The middle-aged man became more and more unscrupulous as he tore Lin Gue's clothes with both of his hands. Her white jade-like skin was exposed to the air. The middle-aged man took out a rope from his back and tied Lin Gue's hands behind her back without any pity. He then said with an evil intent, No problem, when the time comes, everything in the mysterious lady palace will belong to you. However, each and every one of the women in the mysterious lady palace has been carefully selected. They are all very charming and attractive. After we have enjoyed enough, we will hand them over to you. Lin Gue seemed to be used to being tied up by the man from Jinbu Gate. There was no pain or humiliation on her face. Instead, she seemed to be enjoying it. She replied, "Okay. As long as I am in charge of the Xiannu Temple, you can play with whoever you want in the Xiannu Temple. However, that bitch Ziyunxian must be handed over to me after you have played with her enough." When the man from Jinbu Gate heard Lin Gue's words, a look of disdain flashed across his evil face. What a brainless idiot! As long as the plan is completed, the Xiannu Temple will naturally be the backyard of Jinbu Gate. I will be able to do whatever I want. Why would I need a woman like you who is in my way? However, you are pretty good looking. After you have been trained, you will be very suitable to become a female slave. Although he was disdainful of Lin Gue, he still said, "When the time comes, the Xiannu Temple will definitely be yours. However, for now, you have to let me enjoy it. Haha." While the two men were doing shameless things in the room, Li Qingshi, who had already returned to her room, was sitting on the chair with her eyes closed. She seemed to be thinking about something. A faint and almost inaudible voice entered Li Qingshi's ears. "Qingshi, I am here. I will come and find you at night." This is sister's voice. How is this possible? Li Qingshi, who heard the voice, immediately opened her eyes. She sat up straight and was on high alert. She wanted to confirm if it was an illusion. However, the faint voice had already disappeared. Li Qingshi almost thought that she had heard wrongly. Could it be that sister had really come to the Xiannu Temple? But the support from the Haoran Sword sect will only arrive in 5 days. Also, is sister's strength so unfathomable? She could actually send me a voice transmission without anyone knowing. Even I almost thought that it was an illusion. What is going on? Li Qingshi frowned as she tried to figure out the reason. However, she gave up immediately. Judging from the voice, it should be her sister, Li Qingya. Whether it was true or not, she would know at night. Anyway, even if someone wanted to harm her in the Xiannu Temple, it was impossible for them to leave the Xiannu Temple without any resistance. As long as they dared to make a move, they would definitely not be able to walk out of the Xiannu Temple. No matter how weak the Xiannu Temple was, it was still a super sect. How could it allow someone to do as they pleased in its headquarters? Chapter 23. Time flew by in the midst of busyness. Soon it was night time. Everyone in the Xiannu Temple, except for those who were patrolling and keeping watch, gradually fell asleep. The night deepened, and it was already Haishir, equivalent to 9 to 11 o'clock in the evening. Li Qingshi was sitting upright in her room, waiting for someone to come. Her sword was placed beside her right hand, and she was quietly waiting for someone to come. As time passed, the night deepened, and it became quieter. Li Qingshi did not show any signs of impatience. She waited vigilantly. Suddenly, the closed door quietly opened from the outside. A graceful figure flashed into the room, and then closed the door. The person was dressed in white, and there was a plain ribbon around her waist. Her hair was tied into a bun with a carved jade hairpin. Her face was holy and dignified, and she somewhat resembled Li Qingshi. Her aura was ethereal and profound. Li Qingshi looked carefully at the person who came, and her vigilant body finally relaxed. She stood up and shouted happily, "Sister, it's really you." The person who came was Li Qingshi's sister, and Yi Tianzong's grandmother, Li Qingya. Li Qingya looked at her sister, and a happy smile appeared on her face. She stepped forward and held Li Qingshi's hand, saying, "Sister, it's me. Long time no see. Ever since the Xiannu Temple and the Haoran Sword sect were at odds, we only met a few times. In order to keep it a secret, we didn't contact each other through letters. It's been 10 years since we last met. How have you been in the Xiannu Temple?" Li Qingshi did not answer. She first made sure that there was no one around the room, and then pulled her sister to the room where she usually cultivated. She closed the door, and after making sure that no one would find out, she said, "Sister, I've been doing well in the Xiannu temple. I've always been neutral. Almost no one knows about our relationship, so no one has done anything to me. Until today, when the palace lord received news that the reinforcements from the Haoran sword sect would arrive in 5 days, that Lin Gyue came out to stir up trouble again. I no longer had any scruples, so I reprimanded her mercilessly to vent my anger. With her narrow-mindedness, I'm sure she hates me to death right now." Li Qingshi laughed as she vented her anger. Really? You're already an adult. Why are you still acting like a little girl?" Looking at her sister who was laughing, Li Qingya couldn't help but laugh at Li Qingshi. "By the way, sister, didn't you say that the reinforcements from the Haoran sword sect would only arrive in 5 days? Why are you here today? Also, I heard that there are 2 top experts from Wuzong leading the team. Logically speaking, you shouldn't be the one to come. Why can't I sense your martial arts level? What's going on?" After laughing, Li Qingshi couldn't help but ask the question in her heart. Li Qingya laughed and said, "You're still so impatient. Let me tell you slowly. The 2 top experts from Wuzong leading the team this time are new members of the Elder Palace of the Haoran sword sect. My cultivation level is also at the top of Wuzong. It's just that I've cultivated a technique to hide my aura, so you can't sense it. This time, not only did I come to the Xiannu temple early, but my youngest son, your nephew Haoyun, also came with me. They're staying in an inn in Xiannu City, mainly to prevent any unforeseen circumstances. Haoyun also came with me. I haven't seen him in decades since he was born. What unforeseen circumstances are there to prevent? There shouldn't be any unforeseen circumstances in the Xiannu temple now, right? Oh, you mentioned the Elder Palace. As far as I know, the Haoran sword sect doesn't have an Elder Palace, right? When did you have one?" Li Qingshi was even more confused after hearing her older sister's words. Hearing her younger sister's series of questions, Li Qingya couldn't help showing a trace of pride on her face. She said, "I'll roughly tell you about the changes in the Haoran sword sect during these years, starting from when my grandson, Tianzong, was born, then, finally, until the Xiannu temple came to negotiate with the Haoran sword sect. This is the general situation of the Haoran sword sect. I'm telling you about it so that you'll know. The Haoran sword sect is much more powerful than it used to be. You don't need to hide your relationship with me. In the future, you don't need to worry about anything in the Xiannu temple, but don't tell anyone else. The master of the Xiannu temple only needs to tell her about the strength of the Haoran sword sect. Don't say anything else, understand?" Li Qingya reminded her younger sister. Li Qingshi, on the other hand, was shocked by the content of Li Qingya's words. She had never expected that the Haoran sword sect would undergo such earth-shaking changes in less than 10 years. Its strength had improved by leaps and bounds. In comparison, the current strength of the Xiannu temple was simply unbearable to look at. "Sister, you're not lying to me, right? Is the Haoran sword sect really that powerful? Is Tianzong's grandson really that unparalleled?" Li Qingshi couldn't believe it. "Of course it's true. Why would I lie to you? The people you sent to negotiate with the Haoran sword sect also know some things. When the time comes, you'll know when you ask. Also, Tianzong's grandson has taken a fancy to your young palace master, Ling Xinyue. He clearly said that as long as that little girl cultivates to the peak of Wuzong before the war between the righteous and the devil, he will marry her. You have to help him a little in the Xiannu temple. Our grandson has high standards. It's not easy for him to take a fancy to someone. You have to work harder to make this good thing happen. I know that you have planned to marry the young palace master from the beginning. Otherwise, I wouldn't have mentioned this to you," Li Qingya said seriously to her younger sister. "Well, I know, sister. Don't you trust me? If our grandson has taken a fancy to someone, I will definitely talk to the palace master about this matter, and make it happen. Since the Howren sword sect is so powerful, I naturally have confidence in the Xian Nu Temple. Don't worry, Li Qingshi promised. Well, that's good. Also, this time, Haoyun and I came to the Xian Nu Temple in advance because according to the information we received, Zhenbu Gate's forces have already infiltrated the Xian Nu Temple. It has something to do with your Vice Palace Master Lin Gue. Zhenbu Gate has been coveting the Xian Nu Temple for a long time. Without the Howren sword sect's restrictions, Zhenbu Gate's encroachment on the Xian Nu Temple is very serious. Once the Howren sword sect's reinforcements arrive, their plan to encroach on the Xian Nu Temple will fail. Naturally, they won't give up on the situation they have been operating for so many years. It's very likely that Lin Gue will join forces with Zhenbu Gate to launch a rebellion and take control of the Xian Nu Temple before the Howren sword sect arrives. With the strength of the Howren sword sect, there's nothing to be afraid of. However, once the Xian Nu Temple falls into the hands of Lin Gue and Zhenbu Gate, the consequences will be unimaginable. We must prepare in advance, Li Qingya said to Li Qingshi in a serious tone. In fact, these words were basically what Yi Tianzong meant. Ever since he found out that the aunt of the Xian Nu Temple's vice palace master, Lin Gue, was married to the Zhenbu Gate, Yi Tianzong was very sure that Lin Gue was in cahoots with the Zhenbu Gate. The Xian Nu Temple's deteriorating condition over the past few years, and the heavy loss of disciples, was definitely related to Lin Gue. There was no need to investigate at all. Yi Tianzong, with his thousands of years of experience, was certain that a person like Lin Gue, who was in a high position, would definitely collude with foreign enemies and start a rebellion. They only cared about their own interests, and they didn't care about anything else. Therefore, Yi Tianzong was very sure that Lin Gue would definitely work with Zhenbu Gate to take control of the Xian Nu Temple before the people of the Howren sword sect arrived. Therefore, Yi Tianzong persuaded Li Qingya and Yi Haoyun to leave for the Xian Nu Temple before the people of the Xian Nu Temple arrived at the Howren sword sect, so that they could deal with sudden changes. With the strength of Li Qingya and Yi Haoyun, who had cultivated the divine martial heavenly skill, they could fight against Marquis Wu, who was stronger than Wuzong. Therefore, even if they faced 20 people at the peak of Wuzong, it would be no problem. This way, they could eliminate the power of Zhenbu Gate in the Xian Nu Temple, and it would be convenient for the Howren sword sect to subtly control and annex the Xian Nu Temple in the future. Chapter 24. After listening to her elder sister's analysis, Li Qingshi also realized the seriousness of the situation. With Lin Gue's selfish and vicious heart, as long as he had enough power in his hands, it could be said that he would almost certainly start a rebellion. She was not naive enough to think that Lin Gue and the true martial sect were not colluding. Sister, you're right. According to Lin Gue's personality, she will definitely collude with Zhenbu Gate to start a rebellion. I have to inform the palace master and make preparations, Li Qingshi said in a serious tone. Yes, that's right. There can't be many people from Zhenbu Gate hiding in the Xian Nu Temple. It will be too late tomorrow. I think Lin Gue will poison the food in the Xian Nu Temple the day after tomorrow, making most of the people in the Xian Nu Temple lose their ability to move. Then, the people from Zhenbu Gate will deal with you people from Wuzongjing. However, little sister, you don't have to worry. Haoyun and I have already cultivated the martial arts technique specially prepared by Tianzong's grandson. We are no longer the same as before. Currently, Haoyun and I are strong enough to deal with 20 peak martial great masters. Even if that Lin Gue and the true martial sect succeed in causing chaos, Haoyun and I will be able to suppress everything, Li Qingya proudly said. Then, under Li Qingshi's shocked gaze, she released her full power and shrouded Li Qingshi within 2 feet of her. Li Qingshi only felt an overwhelming pressure, as if the sky was falling on her. She was suppressed to the point that she could not move at all. She could not even feel the majestic power in her body that she had always been proud of. The only thing she could do was to look at Li Qingya in shock. Li Qingya only released her aura for a short period of time before retracting it. At the same time, she supported Li Qingshi, who was a little limp because of the terrifying aura suppression. Looking at her sister who was still in shock, she smiled and said, "How is it? I didn't lie to you, right? It's not just strong, it's unbelievable. I can't believe that sister's strength is so shocking. You're invincible now. All we have to do is wait for Lin Gue to rebel and take the opportunity to eliminate them," Li Qingshi said excitedly. Her voice was filled with shock and envy. "Well, you can't be envious. Do you know how many resources I have consumed since I started practicing the cultivation method prepared by Tianzong? That was nearly 100 times more than an ordinary person. Your Xian Nu temple can't afford it. Without Tianzong's permission, I can't teach it to outsiders. Only our temple can practice it. However, if you can facilitate Tianzong's marriage and let the disciples of the Haoran Sword sect settle more marriage matters, I'll talk to Tianzong and give you a set of cultivation methods. Although it's not as good as ours, it's enough to increase your strength by 5 times. Li Qingya pressed Li Qingshi's forehead and said dotingly, "Really? Sister, don't lie to me. You have to keep your word." Li Qingshi grabbed her sister's hand and said emotionally, "Really, I won't lie to you. However, it depends on your performance." Li Qingya looked at her excited sister and said with a smile. She understood Li Qingshi's feelings very well. Just like how ordinary people at the bottom of the hierarchy yearned to practice martial arts, the increase of strength was the biggest temptation for warriors. Not to mention that the Xian Nu temple had always been suppressed and violated. The pursuit of strength was more urgent than any other super sect. Then, she made a rough plan with Li Qingshi and talked about the past. Li Qingya gave her sister a bottle of anti-poison pills that could cure hundreds of poisons and then left. Li Qingshi also controlled her excitement and fell asleep peacefully. Tomorrow, she had to arrange for Li Qingya and Yi Haoyun to secretly enter the Xian Nu temple. She also had to inform Palace Master Zi Yunxian to make some preparations. She couldn't let Lin Gue find out about it. There were many things to do. The next day, Li Qingshi first looked for Zi Yunxian and told her about her sister's guest. She also hid the existence of Li Qingya and Yi Haoyun. She only said that she had the support of the Haoran Sword sect. After Zi Yunxian heard this, she also felt a burst of fear. She knew that with Lin Gue's character, he would definitely rebel. However, it was not realistic to directly expose Lin Gue's plot. Not many people would believe it. She could only wait for Lin Gue to make his move. Therefore, Zi Yunxian and Li Qingshi discussed the countermeasures together. After the discussion, the two of them separately gathered their confidants to make preparations. Their actions were secretive. Until evening, Li Qingshi followed the plan and met up with Li Qingya and Yi Haoyun, who had secretly sneaked in. She found a secret place for the two of them to stay. After that, she returned to her residence as usual and quietly waited for the rebellion that was about to happen tomorrow. As expected, the next day, Lin Gue did indeed put muscle-weakening powder in the food of the Xian Nu temple. Almost all the people of the Xian Nu temple under Wu Zongjing, including the people who belonged to Lin Gue's faction, were affected. Their bodies were sore and weak, and they lost the ability to move. Only Zi Yunxian and Li Qingshi, who were prepared in advance, and the two of them specially informed their confidants, were not affected. They confronted the people of Zhenbu Gate, who were brought by Lin Gue outside the Xian Nu temple. Looking at the people of Zhenbu Gate behind Lin Gue, Zi Yunxian angrily questioned Lin Gue. "Lin Gue, you really colluded with Zhenbu Gate to rebel against your superiors. You did not even let your own people go. You are simply a sinner of the Xian Nu temple. Do you want to destroy the inheritance of the Xian Nu temple?" Seeing that Zi Yunxian and Li Qingshi were unharmed, along with more than 200 people under their command, Lin Gue's face turned ugly. he said with a vicious tone. I really did not expect that Zi Yunxian and Li Qingshi, you two sluts, were actually prepared and did not fall into my trap. However, even if you were prepared, so what? Today, no one can stop me, especially the two of you. I want you to suffer all kinds of humiliation and live a life worse than death. From today onwards, I am the Palace Lord of Xian New Temple. Attack. After Lin Gue finished speaking, a total of 300 people from Jinbu Gate attacked Zi Yunxian, Li Qingshi and the other 200 people under them. Among these 300 people, the weakest one was Wu Ling. There were more than 30 people under Wu Zongjing. There were also 2 experts, who were at the pinnacle of Wuzong, and 6 experts, who were at the late stage of Wuzong. In order to succeed in one fell swoop, Jinbu Gate had sent out a considerable amount of manpower. All of them were elite. As for the Xian New Temple, as the situation of the Xian New Temple had deteriorated over the years, there were only 40 people who were at the pinnacle of Wu Zongjing. There were only 4 experts who were at the pinnacle of Wuzong. They were Li Meng, Li Han, Li Qingshi and a Grand Elder who supported Lin Gue. There were only 7 experts who were at the late stage of Wuzong. The strength of the Jinbu Gate was almost equivalent to the strength of all the higher-ups of the Xian New Temple. They were far more powerful than Zi Yunxian, Li Qingshi and the other 200 people who were left. It was no wonder that Lin Gue was not afraid. The moment the people from Jinbu Gate attacked, Li Qingshi, who had already discovered the huge difference in strength between the two sides, immediately sent out the secret signal that she had discussed with Li Qingya. Then, she started fighting with one of the pinnacle of Wuzong from Jinbu Gate. The other pinnacle of Wuzong from Jinbu Gate was stopped by the Grand Elder who had supported Lin Gue. Under Lin Gue's unsightly expression, Li Qingya and Yi Haoyun, who had been waiting nearby, immediately rushed towards the Mystic Maiden Palace as a pillar of flame soared into the sky. In just a moment, they arrived outside the Xian New Temple. Looking at the people who were fighting, Li Qingya and Yi Haoyun did not care whether they knew each other or not. After all, the people from the Xian New Temple were all women. They just needed to attack the men. The two of them were like tigers that had entered a rabbit's den. Under their precise control, they slapped out with their palms. Immediately, a large number of people below Wu Zongjing died. Even those who were at the middle and late stage of Wu Zongjing died with a single slap. Chapter 25. Except for Li Qingshi, everyone was frightened by the strength of Li Qingya and Yi Haoyun who had suddenly appeared. Are you kidding me? Are my eyes playing tricks on me? That was the late stage of Wu Zongjing. If he was placed in a supersect, he would be considered a superpower. Although there was a big difference in strength between each level of Wu Zongjing, it was still impossible for him to kill someone with just one slap. Did he think that they were cabbages? Everyone was so scared that they stopped, but Li Qingya and Yi Haoyun did not stop. Especially Yi Haoyun. Since he appeared on the scene, he saw Zi Yunxian, who was in a very difficult situation because of a late-stage Wu Zongjing. She was indeed worthy of being the palace master of Xian New Temple. Even if she was in a very difficult situation, she could not hide her beauty. His eyes suddenly lit up, and his heart that had not fluctuated for a long time started to beat faster. Without any hesitation, his qi soared. The strength that was comparable to the Marquis Wu realm was fully released. He shouted, "Miss, don't be afraid. I will save you." After he finished speaking, he killed the late-stage Wu Zongjing enemy in front of him with a punch. Then he flashed to Zi Yunxuan's side. His left hand held Zi Yunxian, who almost fell down. Then he used his right hand to shoot out a golden palm print with a violent force. The late-stage Wu Zongjing enemy who was attacking Zi Yunxian did not have the slightest strength to resist and was blown away. He exploded into a rain of blood in the air. It was Yi Haoyun's palm that scared everyone who was fighting between the Xian New Temple and the Jinbu Gate. They looked at Yi Haoyun, who was holding Zi Yunxian in his arms, in horror. It was too violent. It was too frightening. That was the late-stage Wu Zongjing. He was blown away with just one slap. This was not something that Wu Zongjing could do. Could it be that that man was also in the Marquis Wu realm? But wasn't the existence of the Marquis Wu realm restricted by the heaven and earth? How could he run around like that? Yi Haoyun, who caused all of this, lowered his head and looked at Zi Yunxian, who was in his embrace. Coincidentally, their eyes met and a mysterious change occurred between the two of them. They couldn't help but attract each other. Zi Yunxuan's cheeks, which were red because of the battle, became even redder. Yi Haoyun was in a daze when he looked at her. Noticing this situation, Li Qingya couldn't help but curse in her heart. "Stinky brat, why don't you take a look at where you are? You're still distracted at this time. Have you never seen a woman before?" However, she immediately became happy again. "My youngest son has finally found someone he likes. I don't have to worry about him all day." However, this couldn't go on. Today, everyone here had to stay. Not a single one of them could escape. Li Qingya immediately shouted at Yi Haoyun without any scruples. "Brat, if you want to watch a woman beat the enemy, why are you distracted at this time?" Her shout spread throughout the battlefield. It woke up Yi Haoyun and Zi Yunxian, who were looking at each other. Zi Yunxuan's face instantly became red. She pushed Yi Haoyun away in a panic. Her beautiful figure fluttered more than 100 meters away from Yi Haoyun. Then, she picked a Wuzong early-stage Zhenbu Gate member and attacked him. Yi Haoyun reluctantly looked at Zi Yunxian, who had left. He looked at the enemies in the battlefield with hatred. Then, he angrily roared. His violent and vast aura suppressed the entire battlefield. It was as if he was venting his anger. The heaven-covering palm, the world-suppressing fist from the divine martial heavenly art, was blasted out as if it was free. The sky was filled with palm prints and fist prints. As long as the enemies were within the attack range, they were either blown away or exploded. It was very fierce. The true martial sect's disciples, who were already scared to death, were now even more frightened. "Help! Run! Demon!" The frightened enemies immediately scattered in all directions. Even the two Wuzong Peak Stage Zhenbu Gate members used their fastest speed to escape. If they didn't run, they would die. They didn't have the time to deal with the Xian New Temple members. "Sister Haoyun, don't let them escape. The Xian New Temple members, stop them for me." Li Qingshi used her Zhen Yuan and shouted loudly, indicating Li Qingya and Yi Haoyun's identities. In the face of absolute power, everything was in vain. With the help of the Xian New Temple members, Li Qingya and Yi Haoyun used the Aurora Instantaneous Shadow to kill all the people who were trying to escape. After a round of cleaning, only the culprit Lin Gyue was left. Lin Gyue, who had already been captured, saw that the situation was hopeless. She shouted crazily, "This is impossible! This is impossible!" Looking at Lin Gyue, who had lost his mind, Zi Yunxian sighed with pity and relief. She didn't say anything, then she hit Lin Gyue's forehead, shattering her brain. After everything was settled, Zi Yunxian ordered the remaining members of the Xian New Temple to clean up the battlefield and protect the disciples of the Xian New Temple who couldn't move. After the effect of the muscle-softening powder disappeared, Zi Yunxian followed Li Qingshi to Li Qingya and Yi Haoyun. Her face was a little red, and she deliberately avoided Yi Haoyun's gaze. She bowed to Li Qingya and said, "You must be Senior Li Qingya. Thank you so much for coming to help. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. On behalf of the Xian New Temple, I'm very grateful for your help." "You don't need to thank me. It's what I should do. Since the people of Zhenbu Gate dared to hurt you, I will never let them go." He, Yi Haoyun said before Li Qingya could say anything. He was so straightforward that he almost said, "I like you." Although Zi Yunxian was the temple master of the Xian New Temple, she had heard a lot of compliments from men. However, she had never been attracted to any of them before. Now that she met Yi Haoyun, it was as if she had fallen in love with him at first sight. In addition, Yi Haoyun had saved her life and showed his amazing power. Her cold and calm heart had been fluctuating all the time. When she heard such straightforward words, she blushed and didn't know how to respond. Li Qingyao, who was about to say something, was very angry at Yi Haoyun's useless appearance. This pig brain, from the tone of her voice, she knew that the cold and beautiful woman in front of her was the temple master of the Xian New Temple. And the temple master couldn't have feelings for men. This unlucky child, how could he fall in love with someone he shouldn't? Li Qingyao's originally happy mood suddenly disappeared. She was a little dispirited. Looking at her son's silly appearance, she thought about it and resisted the urge to remind him. Let him be happy for a while. Alas! So she stood at the side and looked at the two people without saying anything. The scene was very awkward. However, Li Qingshi, who was at the side, also saw the signs. This was incredible. The little one had taken a fancy to the young temple master, and the big one had taken a fancy to the temple master. Your family is the nemesis of my Xian New Temple, right? If you get what you want, what will happen to my Xian New Temple? You can't do this. But the one who took a fancy to the temple master was her own nephew. This was a headache. After thinking about it, Li Qingshi finally got the upper hand. She couldn't help but say, Temple Master, we still have two things. Lin Guiue's family is definitely related to this rebellion. Since we killed Lin Guiue, we should take advantage of this opportunity to eliminate the root of the problem. We can't be soft-hearted. Also, those who are loyal to Lin Guiue in the palace must be eliminated while they can't move. After saying that, Li Qingshi looked at her sister. She looked at her elder sister and finally said to Yi Haoyun, Haoyun, I am your aunt Li Qingshi. Elder sister should have mentioned me to you before. In a blink of an eye, a few decades have passed. I have never seen you since you were born. This time, you have helped me so much. You haven't married yet, right? Do you want me to find a beautiful woman for you in the Xian New Temple? Although she can't be compared to the temple master of my Xian New Temple, she will definitely be selected carefully. She has a good appearance and temperament. What do you think? Li Qingshi deliberately emphasized the word temple master. Originally, Yi Haoyun was happy to see his aunt and his sweetheart. However, when he heard Li Qingshi's words, he knew that the person he liked was the temple master of the Xian New Temple. He wasn't stupid. He naturally knew that the temple master of the Xian New Temple was destined to be alone for the rest of her life. She couldn't have feelings for any man. His happy mood was instantly crushed by an iceberg. His smiling face immediately collapsed. However, he still didn't give up and asked Zi Yunxian, You are the temple master of the Xian New Temple? Li Qingshi's words not only shattered Yi Haoyun's beautiful dream, but it also made Zi Yunxian face the cruel reality. Zi Yunxian knew that it was impossible for the two of them to be together. She bitterly wiped away her heartbeat. Her face returned to its cold and indifferent state. She expressionlessly said to Yi Haoyun, I am the temple master of the Xian New Temple. I am also very grateful to young Master Yi for helping me this time. Chapter 26. With Zi Yunxuan's words, Yi Haoyun's expression became very ugly. He clenched his fists tightly. In the end, he calmed down and said to Li Qingshi, Aunt, I'm a little tired. Can you arrange for someone to bring me to a place to rest? After he finished speaking, he looked deeply at Zi Yunxian before turning around and walking away in a lonely manner. Author note: Don't worry, Yi Haoyun and Zi Yunxian will definitely be together in the end. I won't write any tragedies. Looking at her son walking away in a lonely manner, Li Qingya didn't have much interest in talking. After thinking for a while, she said, This time, all the people from Zhenbu Gate were annihilated. Including the previous time, we have lost a lot of strength. Zhenbu Gate will definitely be angry. In a few days, Zhenbu Gate, Demon Sword Sect, Shura Sect and their subordinate first-rate sects will definitely come for revenge. Make your preparations. The purpose of this trip has already been accomplished. In a few days, I will leave with Yi Haoyun and return to the Haoran Sword Sect. After she finished speaking, she nodded towards Li Qingshi and left. After the effect of the muscle-weakening powder wore off, the disciples of the Xiannu Temple, who had regained their ability to move, were led by the 7 elders to Lin Guo's family under Zi Yunxuan's orders. Lin Guo's family members who didn't receive the news didn't even have time to react before they were wiped out. Those who were loyal to Lin Guo were also wiped out. After everything was sorted out, 2 days had already passed. Tomorrow, the main force of the Haoran Sword sect will arrive. The Xiannu Temple also made preparations to receive them. After Li Qingya and Li Qingshi talked about their sisterhood, they left behind some pills and left the Xiannu Temple with the silent Yi Haoyan. They returned to the Haoran Sword sect. At the foot of Xiannu Peak, Zi Yunxian stared at Yi Haoyan for a long time. Finally, she sighed and returned to the Xiannu Temple. The next day, more than 50,000 people from the Haoran Sword sect followed the people from the Xiannu Temple to the Xiannu Peak. They settled down under the arrangements of the Xiannu Temple. At the same time, the Zhenbu Gate, the Demon Sword sect, the Shura sect, and the first-rate sects under their command, under the leadership of the 3 super sects, unexpectedly met with a total of nearly 200,000 people. They were divided into 3 camps and confronted each other 1,000 miles away from the Xiannu Peak. Every super sect in the Central Plains occupied a mountain range with a radius of more than 1,000 miles. The sect's encampment was located on a majestic and steep mountain peak. Apart from the secret passageway that was known to a few high-ranking members of each sect, there was no other way to attack a super sect. Originally, Lin Guo, as the vice-palace master of the Xiannu Temple, had the qualifications to know about the secret passageway of the Xiannu Temple. However, because she had the support of the Zhenbu Gate, even the Supreme Elder who supported Lin Guo had the intention of not telling her. Otherwise, the Xiannu Temple would have been conquered by the Zhenbu Gate long ago and become a vassal sect. Apart from the Haoran Sword sect, the Zhenbu Gate, the Demon Sword sect, and the Shura sect were the 3 super sects closest to the Xiannu Temple. They had never stopped coveting and suppressing the Xiannu Temple. As the strength of the Xiannu Temple became weaker and weaker over the years, the 3 super sects all thought that the time was ripe. They planned to swallow the delicious prey that was the Xiannu Temple before the war between the righteous and the devil. After the previous ambush failed, the 3 super sects all thought that they were in the bag. They did not expect that they would be completely wiped out. The 3 super sects only received the news a few days later. It could be said that they flew into a rage out of humiliation and were very unhappy. In addition, according to the analysis of the information they obtained, the Haoran Sword sect's strength had already recovered. In the future, if they wanted to swallow the Xiannu Temple, they would not have such a good opportunity. Therefore, they no longer endured and wasted time. They spent a few days gathering the strength of their respective first-rate, second-rate, and third-rate sections. Each super sect sent out 20,000 people, taking the lead to gather more than 60,000 people, and headed straight for the Xiannu Temple. With the same thoughts, the Zhenbu Gate, the Demon Sword sect, and the Shura sect met on the way to the Xiannu Temple. The 3 forces were well aware of the thoughts of the other 2 forces. After all, for so many years, the 3 forces had an indescribable tacit understanding regarding the Xiannu Temple. Although the atmosphere was a little tense, it was not hostile. In the end, based on the fact that they had the same goal and that the Haoran Sword sect had intervened, the 3 forces expressed that they would not attack each other. When the time came to attack the Xiannu Temple, they would rely on their own method. The Xiannu Temple had already received the news that the 3 super sects, the Zhenbu Gate, the Demon Sword sect, and the Shura sect, had brought nearly 200,000 people with them. Thus, they discussed with the 2 Wuzong Peak elders that came from the Haoran Sword sect to come up with a strategy to deal with the enemy. After all the discussions were completed, they began to make intensive preparations to welcome the arrival of the battle. This time, the Zhenbu Gate, the Demon Sword sect, and the Shura sect could be said to be full of confidence. The 3 forces had a total of nearly 200,000 people, and they had already figured out the details of the Xiannu Temple. Now, the Xiannu Temple had at most 100,000 people. In the first place, the Xiannu Temple's battle prowess could not be compared to the three forces of the same realm. The Howran Sword sect's support of 50,000 people was such a big movement that it was impossible to hide. The three forces of the Xiannu Temple also knew that the Howran Sword sect's strength was not to be underestimated. Otherwise, the Howran Sword sect would not have been able to stand firm and contend with the three super sects and their affiliated forces, even though they only had the support of a weak ally like the Xiannu Temple. However, it was precisely because the Xiannu Temple's strength was generally not comparable to that of the other super sects in the same realm. In addition, the three forces of the Xiannu Temple had an additional 50,000 people this time. Although this battle would be difficult to win, the final victory would be theirs. As for the follow-up support of the Howran Sword sect, the three super sects' headquarters were not just for decoration. They would definitely not let the Howran Sword sect send reinforcements. Without knowing the true strength of the Howran Sword sect, it could only be said that the three super sects' thoughts were still very optimistic. On the other side, Li Qingya and Yi Haoyun, who were returning to the Howran Sword sect from another path, also saw the majestic forces of the Zhenbu Gate, the Demon Sword sect, and the Shura sect. Regarding this, the two of them had paid attention to concealing their figures in advance and stayed far away. Looking at the majestic forces, Li Qingya coldly snorted and said, in order to deal with the Xiannu Temple, these three sects really put in a lot of effort. I've never seen them put in so much effort when dealing with the other sects that invaded the Central Plains. After saying this, she looked at Yi Haoyun, who was in a daze, and said with a sigh, "Son, don't worry. Although there are many people, you know the strength of our Howran Sword sect. With the addition of the people from the Xiannu Temple, even if we can't win, we'll have no problem stabilizing the situation. That girl is the palace master of the Xiannu Temple. She won't be needed on the battlefield, so your safety won't be a problem. There are many beautiful women in the world. There will be someone suitable for you. Let's go." Yi Haoyun looked in the direction of the Xiannu Temple and reluctantly revealed a smile. He said, "Mother, don't worry about me. I'm fine. Let's hurry back to the sect as soon as possible. There are still many things that I need to deal with." After saying this, he rode ahead on his BMW. Li Qingya looked at Yi Haoyun's appearance and sighed helplessly. The word love is really not up to people. This stinking brat, you're already so old, but you still make me worry. I really owed you in my previous life. When we go back, I'll find a wife for you and make you forget about Ziyunxian. 2 days later, the nearly 200,000 people gathered by Zhenbu Gate, Demon Sword sect, and Shura sect finally arrived at Xiannu City. Facing the people of the Xiannu Temple and the Howran Sword sect in the city, they first threatened and pressured them in various ways, wanting to subdue them without fighting. However, the idea was beautiful, but the reality was cruel. They were scolded by some hot-tempered elders of the Howran Sword sect until they were fuming with anger out of humiliation. They no longer carried out meaningless verbal attack. After reorganizing, they directly launched an attack. Accompanied by the large-scale attack of Zhenbu Gate, Demon Sword sect, and Shura sect, the people of the Howran Sword sect and the Xiannu Temple, who were already waiting in Xiannu City, did not retreat. A war involving hundreds of thousands of people finally broke out. Every day, at least 7,000 people were injured and died. It was very tragic. Zhenbu Gate, Demon Sword sect, and Shura sect relied on their numbers to launch continuous attack. They wanted to end the battle quickly and take down Xiannu City as soon as possible. Because they came from afar, their logistics were tight. Although they could plunder the food of the Xiannu Temple, if the battle dragged on, it would be very disadvantageous for them. On the other hand, the people of the Xiannu Temple and the Howran Sword sect in the city did not have this concern. Chapter 27. Thousands of miles away, the Howran Sword sect was paying close attention to this battle. The border town with the Xiannu Temple was under martial law. Every day, Yi Haoran received news from the Xiannu Temple. Similarly, Zhenbu Gate, Demon Sword Sect, Shura Sect, other super sects, and the Zhou dynasty were also paying close attention to this battle. After all, this was the largest battle between super sects since the last time the Haoran Sword Sect was ambushed. There were only 4 years left until the next battle between the righteous and the devil. This battle was the prelude to the battle. There were bound to be casualties in war. Fortunately, as the battle continued, Zhenbu Gate, Demon Sword Sect, and Shura Sect suffered more casualties than the Haoran Sword Sect and the Xiannu Temple. The ratio of casualties was 7-1, which shocked the attacking forces, Zhenbu Gate, Demon Sword Sect, and Shura Sect, as well as other forces. They discovered that the combat power of the people of the Haoran Sword Clan was simply off the charts, which was greatly different from what they knew before. Not only were their weapons excellent, but their sword techniques were also sharp and lethal. Even their martial arts were strong, and they could fight against 2 people at the same time. At the same time, they could also take care of the disciples of the mystic Maiden Palace. They had a strong sense of self-preservation and had very few casualties. Moreover, the people of the Haoran Sword Sect could form a sword formation with many people. Not only was it lethal, but they could also delay enemies with high cultivation levels until reinforcements arrived. They were simply invincible. This made their estimation of the strength of the Haoran Sword Sect very confusing. How could they know that the cultivation method improved by Yi Tianzong cultivated both the body and Zhen Qi? Not only did it include sword techniques, but it also included fist techniques, palm techniques, and movement technique. These were all the assessment criteria for the disciples of the Haoran Sword Sect. With the pills refined by Yi Tianzong to increase their strength, the disciples of the Haoran Sword Sect could save a lot of time to accumulate strength and practice their martial arts. Moreover, after eliminating all the people with ulterior motives, the other forces could not get much useful information about the changes in the Haoran Sword Sect. Most of the casualties on the side of the Xiannu Temple and the Haoran Sword Sect were the disciples of the Xiannu Temple. The main reason was that the Haoran Sword Sect did not have enough people to take care of them. The battlefield was constantly changing, and even the disciples of the Haoran Sword Sect could be ambushed and killed. It was even more impossible for them to protect every single disciple of the Xiannu Temple. All the forces were paying attention to this battle. Even the Zhenbu Gate, the Demon Sword Sect, and the Shura Sect, who had suffered heavy casualties, did not think of sending reinforcements. This was the most they could bring out without affecting the strategic layout of their sections. Every super sect had enemies, and even the super sects were enemies with each other. Once they lost too much of their forces, their enemies might take the opportunity to attack. Especially when the battle between the righteous and the devil was approaching, a slight move in one part could affect the whole situation. If things went wrong, the war between the righteous and the devil might break out in advance. Now that the Xiannu Temple was fighting, the various forces could roughly estimate the strength of the Zhenbu Gate, the Demon Sword Sect, the Shura Sect, and the Haoran Sword Sect, so that they could prepare in advance. In the eyes of the super sects, there were only super sections. They did not even put the first-rate sects in their eyes. Although the first-rate sects also had their own foundations, they were still far from being comparable to the super sections. As for the Xiannu Temple, all the super sects ignored it. There was no other way. The Xiannu Temple's strength was at the bottom, and its geographical location was basically half surrounded by the Zhenbu Gate, the Demon Sword Sect, and the Shura Sect. It was also because of the Haoran Sword Sect, which was an exception among the super sects, that they kept the Xiannu Temple in check. Otherwise, if it were other super sects, they would have already joined forces to annex the Xiannu Temple. The law of the jungle was just that realistic. The battle lasted for 6 days. The Zhenbu Gate, the Demon Sword Sect, the Shura Sect, and the other attacking forces had lost more than 50,000 people. On the other hand, the Haoran Sword sect and the Xian Nu Temple had only lost about 7,000 people. The situation of attack and defense had reversed, and it was the Haoran Sword sect and the Xian Nu Temple who were attacking the Zhenbu Gate, the Demon Sword sect and the Shura sect. The huge number of casualties and the change in the situation of attack and defense made the three super sects, Zhenbu Gate, the Demon Sword sect and the Shura sect, decide to retreat while they still had the strength to fight. If they didn't retreat now, they would lose even more people in a few days. Once they were surrounded, they wouldn't be able to leave even if they wanted to. The Haoran Sword sect's sword formation had cast a huge psychological shadow on the three super sections. After making up their minds, the three super sects forced their subordinate sects to launch the first attack on the second day. After observing the battle between the Haoran Sword sect and the Xian Nu Temple, they decisively retreated with their own disciples. They didn't care about the people from the first, second, and third-rate sects who launched the attack. In any case, their initial plan was to use these people as cannon fodder. Normally, they would have to worry about them, but now that they might be annihilated by the Haoran Sword sect and the Xian Nu Temple, they couldn't care less. As soon as the three super sects retreated, they were discovered. After all, although many people died, each of the three super sects had about 15,000 people left. With so many people retreating, it was impossible to hide. However, the three super sects didn't care. If they wanted to catch up with them, they would have to go through the first, second, and third-rate sections. By the time the people from the Haoran Sword sect and the Xian Nu Temple caught up with them, they would have already escaped far away. This was indeed the case. When the three super sects retreated, the remaining people knew that they had been abandoned. In their panic, they didn't want to and didn't dare to fight with the people from the Haoran Sword sect anymore. They used all their strength to escape in all directions, blocking the path of the three super sections. The people from the Haoran Sword sect and the Xian Nu Temple had no choice but to chase after these fleeing enemies. They killed as many as they could. When life and death were on the line, a person's potential was unlimited. When these people from the first, second, and third-rate sects were in danger, they exploded with unprecedented speed. Even though the Haoran Sword sect and the Xian Nu Temple used all their strength to chase after them, more than 30,000 people still managed to escape, leaving only about 50,000 people behind. Fortunately, the victory of this battle made everyone happy. In addition, they had been fighting for more than 6 days, so they were physically and mentally exhausted. They didn't care about those who ran away. In any case, these people didn't dare to stay in the Xian Nu Temple's territory. After chasing after the enemies returned, they began to clean up the battlefield. They gathered all the corpses of the enemies and burned them. They burned them for 3 days and 3 nights. A strange smell permeated a radius of 10 miles and didn't disperse for a long time. With the victory of the battle, the crisis of the Xian Nu Temple was resolved. With the deterrence of this battle and the strength of the Haoran Sword sect, at least before the battle between the righteous and the devil, the Zhenbu Gate, the Demon Sword sect, and the Shura sect shouldn't cause any trouble to the Xian Nu Temple. The Xian Nu Temple could finally breathe a sigh of relief. They could rest in peace for a few years and prepare for the battle between the righteous and the devil. However, with the end of the battle, everything gradually became orderly. When the people of the Haoran Sword sect were about to return, a new problem was placed in front of the Xian Nu Temple's palace master, Zi Yunxian, and the elders, causing them to have a headache. There are so many people. More than 10,000 disciples of our Xian Nu Temple want to leave the Xian Nu Temple. What's going on? Zi Yunxian looked at an elder and asked in surprise. It's like this. During the battle these days, because the people of the Haoran Sword sect are very powerful, they took good care of the disciples of our Xian Nu Temple. Quite a number of disciples even saved their lives. During this special period of time, many disciples had feelings for the people of the Haoran Sword sect. Those disciples' sweethearts also promised to marry them openly. In addition, Many disciples of our Xian Nu Temple have married into the Haoran Sword sect before. Therefore, when the Haoran Sword sect leaves this time, many disciples of our Xian Nu Temple want to leave the Xian Nu Temple and leave with the people of the Haoran Sword sect, the elder who was asked said in a strange and helpless tone. This. After hearing the reason that the elder said, everyone in the Xian Nu Temple, including Zi Yunxian, became silent. This kind of situation was something that they didn't expect, and it was also a very troublesome problem. Other than the palace master's bloodline, other disciples of the Xian Nu Temple could marry into other sections. The Xian Nu Temple also never had such a restriction. Although this made it difficult for the Xian Nu Temple to increase their strength, it was also a method to protect themselves. However, if the disciples of the Xian Nu Temple wanted to marry into other sects, they had to leave the Xian Nu Temple and swear not to divulge the secrets and skills of the Xian Nu Temple. In history, the disciples of the Xian Nu Temple who married into other sects, including the Haoran Sword sect, had all left the Xian Nu Temple. However, the phenomenon of such a large scale leaving the Xian Nu Temple all at once was unprecedented in the Xian Nu Temple. Chapter 28. This kind of thing was very troublesome to deal with. If they did not agree, then love between a man and a woman was common sense since ancient times. If they stopped it, not only would it make their own disciples unhappy, it would also make the Haoran Sword sect very unhappy. After all, this was a matter of life and death for many Haoran disciples. It was also against the rules of the Xian Nu Temple. But if they agreed, then this time, the Xian Nu Temple would definitely suffer a great loss and lose a large number of disciples. This was also a bad signal. Zi Yunxian and the elders did not believe that only these 10,000 disciples were tempted. These were only the disciples who were determined to leave the Xian Nu Temple. Those who were tempted by the Haoran Sword sect disciples but had not decided to leave the Xian Nu Temple, there were definitely a lot of female disciples. Once they agreed to let these 10,000 disciples leave the Xian Nu Temple, then the rest of the Xian Nu Temple disciples who were still undecided would follow suit and leave the Xian Nu Temple. When that time comes, the number of disciples in the Xian Nu Temple would decrease by tens of thousands. Their strength would drop again and again. It was very likely that they would break the bottom line of a super sect and fall to the level of a first-rate sect. In a short period of time they would not be able to recover. When the battle between the righteous and demonic sects 4 years later, the Xian Nu Temple would be in danger. If they were not careful, the first-rate sects would come and bully them. That would be throwing away the face of the Xian Nu Temple. They would be laughed at by all the sects in the profound spirit world. At that time, the Haoran Sword sect would not be able to be counted on. In this battle, the Haoran Sword sect had displayed great strength and would definitely become the focus of all the supersections. Once the battle between the righteous and demonic sects began, they would definitely be besieged on all sides. At that time, the Haoran Sword sect might not even be able to take care of themselves. If they only agreed to a part of it, then it would cause the Xian Nu Temple disciples to feel that it was unfair. Once they were dissatisfied, then it would definitely cause the hearts of the Xian Nu Temple disciples to waver. The unity of the sect would be greatly reduced. They couldn't do this and they couldn't do that. However, Zi Yunxian and the elders of Xian Nu Temple were worried sick. In the end, Li Qingshi, the Grand Elder, said, "How about this? Since it's hard to decide, why don't we invite the 2 elders from the Haoran Sword sect to come and make a decision together? After all, our Xian Nu Temple and the Haoran Sword sect are allies. No matter what, they won't let our Xian Nu Temple suffer such a loss." Everyone thought about it and felt that it made sense. Thus, they sent someone to invite the 2 peak elders of Wuzong from the Haoran Sword sect. These 2 peak elders of Wuzong, one of them was the one who saved Ling Xinyue last time, Li Xian. The other one was called Sun He. Both of them were specially trained by Yi Tianzong to be temple masters. After the 2 of them arrived at the Xian Nu Temple, they met with the higher-ups of the Xian Nu Temple. After Zi Yunxian explained the reason, Li Xian thought for a while and said, "Palace Master Zi, I think that it's better to destroy 10 temples than to destroy a marriage. Since these brave girls want to leave with our disciples, then I can guarantee that the disciples of our Howren Sword sect will not let these girls down. Even if the families of these girls follow to our Howren Sword sect, our Howren Sword sect will be responsible for providing them with houses and land. We will definitely settle them down properly." After pausing for a moment, Li Xian continued, "Of course, our Howren Sword sect will not let the Xian New Temple suffer such a huge loss alone. Before coming here, our young sect master has already predicted this situation. Regarding this situation, our young sect master has also told us that he hopes that the Xian New Temple will not interfere. As compensation, from now until the war between the righteous path and the devil path, our Howren Sword sect will provide a large amount of resources every year to help the Xian New Temple quickly recover its strength. As everyone knows, one of the most important factors that restricts the number of people in a sect is the problem of food. Now, our Howren Sword sect has completely gotten rid of the food restriction because of the new type of food that our young sect master has provided. Our Howren Sword sect can provide the Xian New Temple with enough food to recruit 100,000 disciples every year. In addition, we can also provide you with a high-yield food seed to help you plant it. Also, our Howren Sword sect can now refine large amounts of pills. With our young sect master's approval, we can provide you with 100,000 hundred grass pills and golden soar powder every year. We can also provide you with 20,000 vitality pills to treat internal injuries and 5,000 Peiyuan pills to increase your strength by 10 years and 20 years. In this way you can freely recruit disciples. This is enough to guarantee that before the war between the righteous path and the devil path, the Xian New Temple will be even more powerful than it is now. This is already the greatest sincerity that our Howren Sword sect can offer. I wonder what Palace Head Zi and everyone else think?" After Li Xian finished speaking, he looked at Zi Yunxian and waited for her reply. Zi Yunxian first invited the Howren Sword sect's Li Xian and son He to wait in the side hall. Then, she discussed with the elders in the Mystic Maiden Palace. With Li Qingshi's guidance, everyone felt that this was a way to get the best of both worlds. Thus, they agreed to this method and finally reached an agreement with Li Xian and son He. After the problem was solved, they spent another 2 days to prepare. Li Xian and son He brought the Howren Sword sect's disciples and the 20,000 plus Xian New Temple's disciples back to the Howren Sword sect. On the way back, the Howren Sword sect's disciples who had taken their sweethearts were whispering sweet nothings to each other and showing off. This made the single Howren Sword sect's disciples so angry that they gritted their teeth and cursed them in their hearts. When the Howren Sword sect's disciples returned happily, all the super sects in the Central Plains and the Zhou dynasty's disciples who had paid attention to this battle had different reactions. In the center of the Central Plains, there was a huge city with a circumference of over 100 li, Zhou dynasty's imperial city. Among the rows upon rows of palaces, there was a grand and majestic hall. Hundreds of people stood in an orderly manner as they looked at the majestic and mighty man above them. The Zhou dynasty's emperor. One of them said to the Zhou dynasty's emperor, "Your Majesty, according to our intelligence, Zhenbu Gate, Demon Sword sect, and Azura sect suffered a crushing defeat in the Battle of Xian New Temple. They fled back to their respective sects with more than 10,000 people. The Howren Sword sect and Xian New Temple emerged victorious. The casualties they suffered were far less than the 3 defeated super sections. In addition, the individual strength displayed by the Howren Sword sect this time is much stronger than before. They also possess 2 sets of powerful sword formations. According to the analysis of the intelligence, the Howren Sword sect's strength should have surpassed Zhenbu Gates and be ranked among the top super sections. Oh? It seems like the Howren Sword sect has made great progress in these years of recuperation. This is still better than those sects that only know how to fight among themselves. Hearing this, the Zhou dynasty's emperor said casually. He didn't care about the Haoran sword sect's increase in strength. Instead, he was more willing to see the Haoran sword sect's strength increase. No matter what, the Zhou dynasty's strength was enough to easily suppress any super sect. On the Sky Demon Mountain range, on the towering Sky Demon Mountain, in the Sky Demon Palace, the Sky Demon Master, the Master of the Sky Demon Temple, said to the elder in charge of intelligence in a gloomy tone, although the Zhenbu Gate's strength is at the bottom of the top super sects, the Haoran sword sect's strength is a little exaggerated to be able to achieve such results with only 50,000 people. In the future, they will definitely be a great enemy of our Sky Demon Temple. From now on, we must pay more attention to the Haoran sword sect and collect related intelligence. We must find out the secret of their rapid increase in strength. Lingyun Mountain Range, where the Lingyun Hall, one of the 8 righteous sects, was located, the master of the Lingyun Hall looked at the crowd and said, I didn't expect the Haoran sword sect's strength to reach such a level in just a few decades. Zhenbu Gate is really useless. They couldn't even deal with the Xian New Temple after a few decades. From now on, we must increase our intelligence on the Haoran sword sect. We must find out the secret of their rapid increase in strength. In the Zen Buddha mountain range, the master of the Zen Buddha temple said, Amitabha, the Haoran sword sect's strength has exceeded our expectations. I don't know if it's a blessing or a curse. Ghost King Gate said, we must find out the secret of the Haoran sword sect's rapid increase in strength. Kunlun sect, after the battle of the Xian New Temple, all the super sects, including the Zhou dynasty, increased their intelligence on the Haoran sword sect. They sent spies into the Haoran sword sect's territory to gather information. It was foreseeable that with the spies' entry, the situation in the Haoran sword sect's territory would be impossible to hide. High-yielding crops such as potatoes and wheat were definitely the most important resources. When the time came, even the Zhou dynasty would put pressure on the Haoran sword sect to seize them. The higher-ups of the Haoran sword sect, who had long anticipated this, also took countermeasures. Since they couldn't hide it anymore, they wouldn't hide it anymore. When the disciples were sent to support the Xian New Temple, Yi Haoran began to contact the Haoran sword sect's connections in the Zhou dynasty's imperial court. He sent the high-yielding seeds of potatoes, wheat, and rice to them and asked them to present them to the king of Great Zhou at the right time. In this way, not only would the Haoran sword sect's connections in the Zhou dynasty be more stable, they would also be able to get rid of the pressure from the Zhou dynasty. As long as they weren't facing the Zhou dynasty or other super sects, the Haoran sword sect had nothing to fear. If they wanted to directly obtain a large number of seeds from the Haoran sword sect, they would be dreaming. It was better for them to go to the Haoran sword sect's territory and buy them bit by bit from the people. As for entering the Haoran sword sect's headquarters, Tiangang Peak, it was impossible. Not to mention that under Yi Tianzong's request, 10 Wu Zongjing elders would lead 300 elite disciples to patrol the mountain every day. Yi Tianzong himself would use the power of his primordial spirit to investigate Tiangang Peak every few days. There was no way he would let any spies go. Chapter 29. Everything was on the right track. The Haoran sword sect was developing rapidly according to Yi Tianzong's plan. Yi Tianzong was also refining pills, teaching disciples, and dealing with affairs regularly. Today, Li Qingya and Yi Haoyun finally returned to the Haoran sword sect after a few days of traveling. The family gathered together. Yi Tianzong noticed Yi Haoyun, who was in a bad mood, at a glance. He asked in confusion, "Uncle, what's wrong with you? Did your trip to the Xian New Temple not go well?" Yi Haoyun forced a smile and said, "Tianzong, I'm fine. This trip went well." Li Qingya really couldn't stand Yi Haoyun's dejected look and said, "Your uncle has taken a fancy to the master of the Xian New Temple. You also know the rules of the Xian New Temple. Tianzong, you have taken a fancy to their young master. Fortunately, the Xian Nu Temple originally had this intention. With my sister's help in persuading the Xian Nu Temple, there shouldn't be too much of a problem. However, it's absolutely impossible for him to marry the master of the Xian Nu Temple. Your uncle has been like this for the past few days. It really pisses me off. Yi Yuanshan was furious when he heard this. He hit the table with a fiery temper and shouted, "You stinky boy, why are you so useless when you're an adult? It's just a woman. Look at your unlucky face, I want to beat you." Yi Tianzong noticed that Yi Yuanshan's outburst made his grandmother, Li Qingya, raise her eyebrows. It seemed that she was about to get angry, but considering her son's situation, she endured it. However, it could be foreseen that his grandfather would definitely be taught a lesson when there was no one around. He snickered in his heart and said to Yi Haoyun, "Uncle, you don't have to do this. If you really like the master of the Xian Nu Temple, it's not impossible. But you have to be prepared to wait." When Yi Haoyun heard Yi Tianzong's words, he immediately became more energetic and asked anxiously, "Tianzong, what did you say?" "I still have a chance, but how is that possible?" According to the rules of the Xian Nu Temple, the palace master of the Xian Nu Temple is absolutely not allowed to have feelings for a man. Even if she abdicates, she can only die alone. Yi Haoran said seriously, "Tianzong, this is not a joke. The palace master of the Xian Nu Temple must die alone. This is the most basic rule of the Xian Nu Temple. Unless the Xian Nu Temple is destroyed, they will never compromise. If the young palace master is gone, they can choose another one. But it is absolutely impossible for the palace master to marry someone else. You can't be thinking of forcefully suppressing the mystic maiden palace, right? Our Haoran sword sect can't do such a thing." Li Qingya also said, "Tianzong, your father is right. Our Haoran sword sect can't do such a rude and domineering thing." Seeing that his mother and grandfather also wanted to persuade him, Yi Tianzong waved his hand to stop them. Then he said, "What are you thinking? I didn't say that we want to suppress the Xian Nu Temple, but you all ignored an important point. According to you, the Xian Nu Temple's palace master killed the deputy palace master who didn't get along with her. Even the deputy palace master's family had an ancestor who was sleeping in the Xian Nu Temple's secret realm and guarded the Xian Nu Temple during the last battle between the righteous and the devil. I think that in a few years, when the righteous and the devil fight, with the strength of the Xian Nu Temple, the ancestor of the deputy palace master will definitely not let go of the Xian Nu Temple's palace master. This is the chance for Uncle. At that time, the Xian Nu Temple's palace master will either be abolished and imprisoned in the Xian Nu Temple, or be killed on the spot. Even her henchmen are likely to be wiped out, and even grandmother's sister will be implicated. This is not only Uncle's chance, but also our Haoran sword sect's chance, isn't it?" Yi Tianzong didn't say it clearly, but everyone understood. Yes, this was indeed an opportunity. Annexing the Xian Nu Temple was a plan that Yi Tianzong made after discussing it with his family. Even Li Qingya didn't oppose it. After all, Li Qingya had left the Xian Nu Temple a long time ago, and her master had passed away. She only had a sister and her family in the Xian Nu Temple. If they annexed the Xian Nu Temple, it would definitely be better under the Haoran sword sect's rule than the current Xian Nu Temple. In a few years, when the Xian Nu Temple changed, the Haoran sword sect would annex the Xian Nu Temple. Yi Haoyun, who had a plan in mind, got rid of his dejected state and regained his calm and wise appearance. After all, calmness and wisdom were indispensable for the Haoran sword sect's punishment hall master and skill imparting hall master. Seeing Yi Haoyun's change, Yi Tianzong sighed and said, "The love between a man and a woman is really incredible. Even my calm and wise uncle can't help but be affected by it." After sighing, he said to Yi Haoyun, "Uncle, didn't we promise to provide a lot of food and elixirs every year in the past few years? You'll be responsible for escorting those elixirs. You should get in touch with the palace master of the Xian Nu Temple. Since you can feel that she has feelings for you, show her your spirit and ability. You can find an excuse to guide her in martial arts and deepen your relationship. At that time, whether we can annex the Xian New Temple smoothly or not depends on you. Haha. Yi Haoyan smiled and said, Haha, don't worry, Tianzong. Just wait and see. Hearing Yi Haoyan's words, the others also smiled with relief. Because of their own affairs, after the family dispersed, Yi Tianzong returned to his room. He had his own things to do. Ever since he found out how to break the seal of heaven and earth, Yi Tianzong had been preparing. The profound spirit world experienced an unknown change in the mythological era. Since then, it was covered with seals and restrictions that constantly absorbed the power of the profound spirit world. As time passed, the profound spirit world became more and more weak. Until now, it had shrunk by hundreds of millions of times. It could only break through to Wuzongjing. And over the years, Yi Tianzong carefully sensed that the origin qi between heaven and earth was still slowly weakening. If the seal was not broken, as time passed, the profound spirit world would sooner or later enter the age of chaos, and it would no longer be able to cultivate. However, when Yi Tianzong reincarnated into the profound spirit world, he had not yet dissolved all his cultivation and entered the profound spirit world. When he was at his peak, he used the authority of a primary disciple and the power of the immortal mansion to see a part of the truth of the profound spirit world. Although it was sealed and could not absorb energy from the outside world to replenish itself, it still retained a strong source of the world after a long time. As long as the seal was broken, it could begin to absorb energy from the outside world to replenish itself, and at the same time, gradually recover to its peak. As for the changes that happened to the profound spirit world, Yi Tianzong guessed from the various seals that he had seen in the past that there should be something suppressed in the depths of the profound spirit world. It required the sacrifice of a powerful middle world to suppress it, which showed how terrifying the thing that was suppressed was. Yi Tianzong used his powerful primordial spirit to analyze and deduce the method to break the seal of the profound spirit world. He had already found it. There were two conditions that needed to be met. One was to have powerful strength, and the other was to activate at least one kind of power between heaven and earth. It was impossible to break the seal of heaven and earth in one step. It could only be unsealed according to the martial artist's strength. For example, if Yi Tianzong wanted to break through to the Marquis Wu realm, then he would have to use the Wuzong realm to have the strength of the Marquis Wu realm. Then, Yi Tianzong would have to endure the backlash of the corresponding Marquis Wu realm seal. After enduring the backlash, he would be able to break a part of the seal, allowing the profound spirit world to absorb energy from the outside world and increase the size of the world. The upper limit of the martial arts realm would be raised to the Marquis Wu realm. Activating a certain kind of power between heaven and earth was used to communicate with the profound spirit world's consciousness. It was to avoid the pressure from the profound spirit world when breaking the seal, and the power needed to be strong enough. As for a certain kind of power between heaven and earth, Yi Tianzong gradually understood what it was. It referred to the Haoran righteous qi between heaven and earth, the power of merit, the power of faith, the power of destiny, the power of light, and so on. After understanding these powers, Yi Tianzong began his preparations. Just like the potato, corn, wheat, rice, sweet potato, and the other 5 high-yielding crop seeds, it was to obtain the power of merit. First, it was planted in the Haoran sword sect. Then, it was spread to the central plains through the Zhou dynasty. Then, it spread to the western region, northern border and southern wasteland. These high-yielding crops could save countless lives. It was definitely a great merit. Other than the power of merit, Yi Tianzong also planned to activate another kind of power, the Haoran righteous qi between heaven and earth. And for this, Yi Tianzong prepared to compile a Haoran true scripture. The Haoran righteous qi was a vast and upright qi that filled heaven and earth. It was also known as the righteous qi of the human world. This kind of qi was formed through the accumulation of righteousness and morality. In terms of martial arts, it was the path of chivalry. In terms of literature, it was the path of righteousness and righteousness. It was the path of righteousness and righteousness. It was the path of righteousness and righteousness. From the beginning of Yi Tianzong's practice of martial arts, he had always carried out the path of righteousness and righteousness. He had always wanted to eradicate the evil path. After thousands of years of accumulation, he had already transcended the path of righteousness and righteousness. He had sublimated into the path of Haoran righteousness. As for the Haoran true scripture that Yi Tianzong wanted to compile, it was a synthesis of all the classic theories that he had seen in the process of transmigrating. With his own Haoran righteousness as the foundation, it was a combination of other classic theories. The Haoran true scripture used Haoran righteousness as the spiritual core. It started with the Haoran righteousness song, which could be found online. It was divided into 7 major categories: general principles, country chapters, individual chapters, sect chapters, family chapters, comprehensive chapters, and cultivation chapters. Within each major category, it was further divided into different subcategories. From individual behavior to family system, sect management, country governance, agriculture, literature, medicine, and martial arts, it could be said to be a great work. It was the first of its kind in the profound spirit world. Once the Haoran true scripture appeared in the world, Yi Tianzong could use the Haoran true scripture to obtain the merit of teaching and become the ancestor of a sect. With this, Yi Tianzong could also use his own will and spirit to carry out the Haoran sword sect. He could establish the Haoran sword sect's philosophy and beliefs, and obtain supreme status and prestige. When the time came to break the seal of heaven and earth, he could also use the power of the Haoran sword sect to activate the Haoran righteousness of heaven and earth. After 3 years, the Haoran true scripture was almost complete. In another 2 months it would appear in front of the world. Yi Tianzong looked at his own painstaking efforts for the past few years, and could not help but feel proud and gratified. Chapter 30. P.S. It's National Day and I have to go back to my hometown to help out. It's time for the autumn harvest and there's a lot of farm work. I can't sleep too late at night and affect my family's rest. I don't have much time to write and can only update once a day. Readers, please forgive me. After National Day, I'll be able to update twice a day. Just as Yi Tianzong was concentrating on the Haoran Sutra, in the Xian New Temple thousands of miles away, Zi Yunxian was looking at Ling Xinyue with a headache. Previously, the 2 elders, Li Meng and Li Han, who had gone to the Haoran sword clan to negotiate, had told Zi Yunxian about the negotiation process and what they had seen and heard. Zi Yunxian also had a rough understanding of the Haoran sword clan. She was naturally envious of the Haoran sword sect's ability to refine large amounts of pills. Fortunately, Haoran sword sect's Li Xian promised to provide large amounts of pills to the Xian New Temple. The Xian New Temple didn't have to pay a huge price to get Medicine King Valley to help. What really gave Zi Yunxian and the other elders a headache was the problem of Ling Xinyue. Through Li Meng's narration, everyone knew that the Haoran sword sect's junior sect leader was determined to get Ling Xinyue. The Haoran sword sect didn't hesitate to start a war and Ling Xinyue's attitude showed that she was willing. This made the Xian New Temple's people uncomfortable. Their most outstanding disciple, the junior sect leader that they had painstakingly nurtured, went to the Haoran sword sect and actually had someone in her heart. This was completely against the Xian New Temple's rules. However, who asked them to have the idea of a marriage alliance first, and it was seen through by the other party. The other party was very strong and forced the Xian New Temple to agree. After the battle, the Xian New Temple was on the right track. Ling Xinyue proposed to Zi Yunxian to leave the Xian New Temple. Zi Yunxian looked at his disciple in front of him. The melancholy and helplessness in his heart were indescribable. The other elders of the mystic Maiden Palace had different expressions on their faces, but all of them remained silent. After learning about the Haoran sword sect's attitude and strength, Even though they were dissatisfied, they didn't dare to speak carelessly. Furthermore, after Lin Guo's rebellion, they also knew about the relationship between Li Qingshi and the Haoran sword sect. Now that Li Qingshi was sitting in the mystic maiden palace, if they said anything unpleasant, they would face Li Qingshi's wrath. As if she had thought of something, Zi Yunxian was stunned. Finally, she said tiredly to Ling Xinyue, who was kneeling on the ground, "Sigh, fine. Since you have made up your mind, then we, the Xian Nu Temple, will not be the bad guys in vain. I hope that your choice is correct." "I agree. You can go." Ling Xinyue, who was kneeling on the ground, raised her head and looked at Zi Yunxian with tears in her eyes. She said coldly, "Thank you, Master, for your help. This disciple is unable to repay your kindness. If the Xian Nu Temple is in trouble in the future, this disciple will do her best to help. Master, please take care." After saying that, Ling Xinyue stood up and left the Mystic Maiden Palace. She returned to her residence and packed her luggage. After bidding farewell to the disciples of the Xian Nu Temple who had sent her off, she walked down the Mystic Maiden Peak alone. At the bottom of the Mystic Maiden Peak, she looked back at the Xian Nu Temple. Finally, she turned around and headed towards the Haoran sword sect. Ling Xinyue rode on the horse and was very careful along the way. She was always vigilant. Only when she entered the border town of the Haoran sword sect did she let out a sigh of relief. After another 3 days, Ling Xinyue arrived at the Haoran city. She found the principal elder of the Haoran city and wanted to enter the Haoran sword sect. The principal elder of the Haoran city did not dare to neglect Ling Xinyue. In fact, after Ling Xinyue left the Xian Nu Temple for more than a day, Yi Tianzong received the news. He specially instructed the principal elder of the Haoran city to bring Ling Xinyue safely to the Haoran sword sect. The principal elder, who had already investigated the relationship between Ling Xinyue and Yi Tianzong, did not dare to neglect her. This was very likely to be the future wife of the young sect master. He could not afford to let anything happen to her. Otherwise, he would be finished. Under the guidance of the principal elder of the Haoran city, Ling Xinyue finally met with Yi Tianzong. Yi Tianzong looked at the travel-worn, somewhat haggard and stubborn Ling Xinyue. He already knew about the matter of her leaving the Xian Nu Temple. Ling Xinyue was an orphan and was adopted by the palace master of the Xian Nu Temple due to fate. After leaving the Xian Nu Temple, she would have no one to rely on. She would have nothing and would be all alone. This little lass did not leave a way out for herself. The most difficult thing to accept was the grace of a beauty. Ling Xinyue had gone to such an extent for him. Yi Tianzong was not pretentious. He tenderly pulled Ling Xinyue into his arms, sniffed her fine black hair, and said, "In the future, you will be my Yi Tianzong's woman. There's no need to wait for a few years. I will marry you this year. Listen to me on this matter. Don't cultivate the Xian Nu Heart Sutra. I will give you a better cultivation method." Ling Xinyue was quietly held in Yi Tianzong's arms. When she heard Yi Tianzong's words, the worry in her heart disappeared. A happy smile appeared on her beautiful and haggard face. In the end, she did not regret her choice. She said, "Okay." After that, Yi Tianzong led Ling Xinyue to see Yi Haoran, Su Mingxin, and other members of Yi Tianzong's family. He told them about the matter of Ling Xinyue leaving the Xian Nu Temple and expressed his decision to marry Ling Xinyue this year. Regarding this, Yi Tianzong's family naturally did not have any objections. They all agreed. In the following days, Yi Tianzong first announced this matter to the entire sect. He confirmed Ling Xinyue's identity and prepared 30,000 pills as betrothal gifts to the Xian Nu Temple. Then, he taught Ling Xinyue the Divine Martial Sky Technique. Yi Tianzong's Divine Martial Sky Technique did not discriminate between men and women. It was just more suitable for men to cultivate. The Divine Martial Sky Technique that Yi Tianzong taught his family and Ling Xinyue was a cultivation method that Yi Tianzong had tailored for them based on the original foundation. The main content of the cultivation method did not change. It was just more suitable for them. Under the support of Yi Tianzong's unlimited supply of pills and explanations, Ling Xinyue no longer cultivated the Xian New Temple's cultivation method. Instead, she cultivated the divine martial sky technique. Very quickly, she was on the right track. Her martial arts cultivation and strength rapidly increased. Because he had to guide Ling Xinyue in cultivating the divine martial sky technique, the completion of the Haoren Sutra was delayed by a month. But in the end, it was completed. The Haoren Sutra was divided into 7 books according to 7 categories. Looking at the 9 copies of the Haoren Sutra in front of him, he was satisfied. In addition to the 2 original manuscripts that Yi Tianzong had written, there were also 7 new books that had been printed using movable type printing technology. According to his habit, Yi Tianzong first put one original manuscript in the immortal mansion, and then left the other original manuscript in his room. He put the remaining 7 printed books in a wooden box. It was noon now. Yi Tianzong took the wooden box to the Jingxin Hall, where the family ate. The family, including Ling Xinyue, had already gathered together. Looking at Yi Tianzong, who walked in with a wooden box, Yi Haoren could not help but ask, "Tianzong, what is in the wooden box that you are holding?" Yi Tianzong said, "Haha, nothing. Let's eat first. After lunch, I will show you." Seeing that Yi Tianzong did not say anything, everyone suppressed their curiosity and began to eat. After lunch, there was nothing important. Yi Haoren continued to ask, "Tianzong, now can you tell us what is in the wooden box? Why are you still keeping us guessing?" Yi Tianzong said to everyone with a smile, "This box contains the Haoren Sutra that I spent more than 3 years compiling. It contains my martial arts beliefs and life insight. For these things, I spent a lot of energy and effort. Today, I will show you my result." After that, Yi Tianzong opened the wooden box and took out 6 copies of the Haoren Sutra from it. He handed 1 copy to his grandfather, grandmother, father, mother, uncle, and Ling Xinyue. When everyone heard Yi Tianzong's words, they looked at the book in their hands and could not help but look serious. They adjusted their minds and turned to the first page of the general outline under Yi Tianzong's smiling gaze. The beginning was Haoren's majestic, Haoren's Song of Righteousness. There is righteousness in heaven and earth. Manifold is created by miscellaneous things. Below it is rivers and mountains. Above it is the sun and stars. Yurinue Haoren. Yurinue fills the firmament. After reading it, everyone was deeply immersed in the Haoren Sutra in the book and could not extricate themselves. They forgot everything in the outside world and were only fascinated by the Sutra of Heaven and Earth in the book. Yi Tianzong looked at them and smiled. Without saying goodbye, he left alone with the remaining Haoren Sutra. Then he went to the printing office in the Haoren Sword sect and handed the Haoren Sutra to them. He asked them to print 50,000 copies as soon as possible. After that, he returned to his room and entered the immortal mansion to begin his daily cultivation. Although his current cultivation had reached the upper limit of the profound spirit world, and no matter how he cultivated, he could not increase his cultivation. However, there was no limit to the cultivation of his body and mind. Even if each improvement was very weak, Yi Tianzong never gave up any chance to increase his strength. Chapter 31. Yi Haoren and the other 5 were immersed in the infinite principles of the Haoren scripture, unable to extricate themselves. Apart from the fact that they had to eat due to hunger, they spent half a month reading it. Only then did they barely manage to finish reading it. As for the principles within it, they had only scratched the surface. After reading it, the 6 people were shocked beyond words. Ling Xinyue, who was already in love with Yi Tianzong, looked at Yi Tianzong with eyes full of worship. This made Yi Tianzong, who had an unfathomable mental state, feel somewhat proud. Once again, they gathered in the Jingxin Hall. Yi Tianzong said to Yi Haoren and the other 5, "Grandfather, father, let me roughly explain to you why I wrote the Haoren Sutra." You all know that since the end of the ancient era, the heaven-earth yuan qi has weakened and the environment has become worse and worse. Now, us martial artists can only stop at Wu Zongjing. Apart from managing the sect, the most important thing I have done these years is to find a way to reverse this situation. You all know where I came from. After years of constant exploration, I found that our world is full of seals and restrictions, and these seals and restrictions are the reason for the decline of our world. If we want to reverse the decline of the reincarnated world and let our world return to the prosperity of the late ancient era, or even the ancient era, we must break these seals and restrictions. After pausing for a moment, Yi Tianzong continued, I have also found a way to break the seals and restrictions. There are 2 points that need to be met. First, you must have enough strength. If you want to raise the upper limit of the martial arts realm to the Marquis Wu realm, then you must at least have the strength of the Marquis Wu realm in Wuzongjing. Second, you must draw upon a kind of power between heaven and earth as a medium to communicate with the original consciousness of heaven and earth, so as to avoid being oppressed by heaven and earth after breaking the seal. Noticing the puzzled expressions on the other people's faces, Yi Tianzong briefly explained to them what the power between heaven and earth was. Then he continued, We have saved many people over the years with the high-yield grain seeds. Now we have offered the seeds to the Zhou dynasty. In a few years, through the Zhou dynasty, we can at least spread it to the entire Central Plains, and even the western regions, northern borderlands and southern wastelands. Then, as the offering of the seeds, our Howran Sword sect will inevitably receive invisible heaven and earth merit. These invisible merit have no power, but it can protect us from being targeted by heaven and earth when we break the seal of heaven and earth. Another power is used to communicate with the original consciousness of heaven and earth. My goal is to Howran heaven and earth. You should have some understanding of the overwhelming righteousness from the overwhelming true scripture that I wrote. I have also mentioned the method to comprehend Howran heaven and earth in the Howran heaven and earth scripture. My plan is to spread the Howran heaven and earth scripture throughout the entire sect, so that our Howran Sword sect will have a clear belief and philosophy, and become the origin of Howran heaven and earth. Then, when the time is right, we will selectively spread the contents of the Howran heaven and earth scripture to the entire Central Plains with our Howran Sword sect as the center. When we break the seal of heaven and earth, we will use the power of the entire sect to trigger the Howran heaven and earth scripture. According to my guess, as long as we successfully break the seal of heaven and earth, everyone who participates will receive a gift from heaven and earth. Even if we fail, I can guarantee that there will not be too many losses. Once we succeed, our Howran Sword sect will have the foundation to become a holy land. However, by then, the Howran Sword sect will no longer be suitable. How about we change our name to Hao Ranjin sect? Listening to Yi Tianzong's plan, Yi Yuanshan, Yi Howran, and the other 5 people's outlook on life was undoubtedly greatly impacted. Although they knew that Yi Tianzong must have a purpose for bringing out the Howran heaven and earth scripture, they did not expect Yi Tianzong to make such a heaven-defying move to continue the path of martial arts. Once they succeeded in breaking the seal of heaven and earth, the Howran Sword sect would be far different from other super sects and become a new holy land. Imagining the glorious scene in the future, Yi Yuanshan and Yi Howran, as the leaders, looked at each other. The passion and excitement in their eyes were undisguised. In the end, Yi Yuanshan suppressed his excitement and confirmed with Yi Tianzong again. Tianzong, how confident are you? Yi Tianzong said confidently, Grandfather, I don't dare to say how confident I am. Even if we fail, our Howran Sword sect will have the protection of merit, and no one will die. With my strength, I can suppress all enemies. Well, let's do it. Tianzong, from today onwards, our Howran Sword sect will be at your disposal. Everything will be in service of this matter. Since there will be no danger of the sect being destroyed if we fail, and there will be endless glory if we succeed, what's there to worry about? Yi Yuanshan waved his hand and made the decision. Li Qingya, Su Mingxin, Yi Haoyun, and Ling Xinyue also agreed. Seeing this, Yi Tianzong said, "Well, this matter is settled. From now on, we have to make preparations. There are less than 4 years before the war between the righteous and the devil. It's too late to do it before. I plan to set it at 5 years after the war. There are 3 steps to promote the Haoran scripture. First, we have to popularize the Haoran scripture in the whole sect so that our Haoran sword sect will have a clear martial arts belief and spirit. Then, we will promote it to the areas under our rule, and finally to the Central Plains through the Tiangang Pavilion. This is the general plan. I have already asked someone to print 50,000 copies of the Haoran scripture. When the time comes, it will be stored in the Merit Hall and announced to the whole sect. If you want to read it, you have to exchange merit points. I will put the original manuscript in the Sutra Depository in the future." Hearing that there was an original manuscript of the Haoran scripture, Yi Tianzong and others were immediately excited. An original manuscript was different from a printed one. An original manuscript contained some of Yi Tianzong's spiritual thoughts when he was writing it. It was far from being comparable to a printed one. Yi Haoyun couldn't wait to say, "Tianzong, where is the original manuscript now? Show it to me. Hurry up." "Oh, the original manuscript? It's on the desk in my room and—" Before Yi Tianzong finished his words, he saw Yi Tianzong leaving the Jingxin Hall first. Li Qingya, Yi Haoran, Yi Haoyun, and Su Mingxin also hurried to catch up with him. Only Ling Xinyue stayed in the Jingxin Hall, looking at Yi Tianzong with admiration and expectation. Ever since Yi Tianzong acknowledged Ling Xinyue as his daughter, Yi Haoran and the others didn't treat her as an outsider. They took good care of her in daily life. What they needed now was just a ceremony. Yi Tianzong looked at Ling Xinyue, who was in a snow-white dress and had an elegant temperament. He walked forward and held her in his arms. He caressed her hair and asked with a smile, "Don't you want to go and have a look?" Ling Xinyue, who was in Yi Tianzong's arms, hugged Yi Tianzong with both hands. Her beautiful head was pressed against Yi Tianzong's chest. She seemed to enjoy it. Hearing Yi Tianzong's words, she nodded, then shook her head. "Oh, this little girl." Yi Tianzong touched Ling Xinyue's head with affection. He liked Ling Xinyue more and more. As time passed, everyone was very satisfied with Ling Xinyue's excellence. Although she had a cold personality and didn't talk much, it didn't stop everyone from liking her. Especially as time passed, Ling Xinyue liked to stick to Yi Tianzong more and more. Like a pet, she liked to be held in Yi Tianzong's arms. She enjoyed Yi Tianzong's breath and warmth. Other than cultivating, she liked to stay by Yi Tianzong's side and quietly look at Yi Tianzong. Feeling Ling Xinyue's growing love for him, Yi Tianzong also liked Ling Xinyue more and more. In the Jingxin Hall, Yi Tianzong quietly hugged Ling Xinyue and enjoyed each other's love and warmth. After a few days, 50,000 copies of the Haoran Sutra were finally printed and placed in the Achievement Hall. Then, Yi Tianzong announced in the Haoran Hall that the entire sect would study the Haoran Sutra. He also issued a series of measures. When they found out that the Haoran Sutra was compiled by Yi Tianzong after years of painstaking effort and contained Yi Tianzong's martial arts philosophy and life views, the elders and disciples who didn't take it seriously abandoned their contemptuous attitude and took out a serious attitude to read the Haoran Sutra. Once they read it, they couldn't stop. The entire Haoran sword sect was in an uproar because of Yi Tianzong's Haoran Sutra. The Haoran sword sect's style of doing things had always been closer to that of a gentleman. They were more upright, but they also clearly distinguished between kindness and hatred. They would seek revenge for the smallest grievance. However, the Haoran sword sect didn't have a clear philosophy and spirit of the sect. The appearance of the Haoran Sutra pointed out the vague philosophy and spirit of the Haoran sword sect. It gave them a clear goal and belief in their martial arts. Moreover, studying the Haoran Sutra often could also speed up their cultivation progress. It should be known that when Yi Tianzong improved the martial arts cultivation method, he had also incorporated some of his Haoran orthodox philosophy into it. The Haoran sword sect now had more than 200,000 disciples. 50,000 copies of the Haoran Sutra wasn't enough to exchange for all of them. If it wasn't for the strict discipline of the Haoran sword sect under the leadership of Yi Tianzong, many of the disciples would have already fought. Therefore, Yi Tianzong ordered another 300,000 copies to be printed. In any case, even if the Haoran sword sect's disciples couldn't exchange for all of them, there would still be a need to print a large number of copies when the Haoran sword sect was introduced to the entire Haoran. Just as the entire Haoran sword sect was immersed in the principles of Haoran in the Haoran Sutra, Yi Tianzong summoned the people from the Tiangang Pavilion. Ever since the Tiangang Pavilion was established 3 years ago, Yi Tianzong had been the Tiangang Pavilion's pavilion master and was in charge of everything. However, the main tasks were assigned to the 10 Tiangang Pavilion commanders. Today, Yi Tianzong gathered the 10 Tiangang Pavilion commanders and asked them, "It's been 3 years. How's the progress on the mission I've given you guys?" The Tiangang Pavilion commander standing at the head of the table said, "Pavilion Master, after 3 years of infiltration, gathering, and exchanging information with some other intelligence organizations, we've basically found out what you've instructed us to do. Although there might be some discrepancies in some confidential matters, most of the information should be correct." Very good. I'll give you guys 1 month's time. I want to see the Prodigy ranking, 100 Flower ranking, Master ranking, and Mysterious Item ranking appear before the eyes of the world. The war between the righteous and demonic paths is approaching, so let's warm them up in advance and find something for them to do. This will prevent those super sects from always having their eyes on our Haoran sword sect, Yi Tianzong said calmly. Yes, Pavilion Master, the 10 Tiangang Pavilion commanders replied. Chapter 32. The Heaven's Chosen List, 100 Flower List, Great Master List, and Mysterious Item List were the missions that Yi Tianzong had given out since the establishment of the Tiangang Pavilion. Their purpose was to collect the outstanding disciples, beauties, Wuzong experts, and mysterious items in the spirit profound world's central planes. According to Yi Tianzong's plan, the Heaven's Chosen List had 108 Heaven's Chosen List under the age of 25. The number of Heaven's Chosen List was based on their cultivation and battle achievements. The 100 Flower List included 108 beauties under the age of 25. The Great Master List included 49 Wuzong expert. The Mysterious Item List included all the divine weapons and exotic flowers and fruits in the spirit profound world. The majority of people in the world could not escape from fame and fortune. The appearance of these 4 lists would definitely add fuel to the fire in the central plains, attracting the attention of all the major sects and powers. A month later, the Heaven's Chosen List, 100 Flower List, Great Master List, and Mysterious Item List appeared in all the major cities in the Central Plains, stirring up the emotions of almost all the martial artists. The Heaven's Chosen List. First place, Great Zhou's Crown Prince, Wuzong Middle Stage. Second place, Lingyun Hall's Young Master, Wuzong Middle Stage. Third place, Sky Demon Temple's Young Master, Wuzong Middle Stage. Fourth place, Great Zhou's Third Prince, Wuzong Peak Early Stage. Fifth place, Zen Buddhist Temple's True Yen, Wuzong Peak Early Stage. Sixth place, Ghost King Sect's Young Master, Wuzong Peak Early Stage. Seventh place, Great Zhou's Seventh Prince, Wuzong Peak Early Stage. Eighth place, Haoran Sword Sect's Young Master, Wuzong Peak Early Stage 100 Flower List. First place, Princess Qingqing of Great Zhou, Wuzong Primary Stage. Second place, Princess Lianyu of Great Zhou, Wuzong Primary Stage. Third place, Princess Mengli of Great Zhou, Wuzong Primary Stage. Fourth place, Ling Xinyue, former young mistress of Xian New Temple, Wu Ling Peak Stage. Fifth place, young mistress of Qingxian Pavilion, Wu Ling Peak Stage. Sixth place, Princess Yunhuan of Great Zhou Wu. Ling Peak Stage, Master List. First place, Wang Shang of Great Zhou Wuzong Peak Stage. Second place, Master of Lingyun Hall Wuzong Peak Stage. Third place, Palace Master of Sky Demon Temple Wuzong Peak Stage. Fourth place, Grand Preceptor of Great Zhou Wuzong Peak Stage. Fifth place, Imperial Commander of Great Zhou Wuzong Peak Stage. Sixth place, Divine General of Great Zhou Wuzong Peak Stage. Seventh place, Temple Master of Zen Buddhist Temple Wuzong Peak Stage. Eighth place, Commander of Great Zhou Imperial Army Wuzong Peak Stage. Ninth place, Sect Master of Ghost King Sect Wuzong Peak Stage. 10th place, Sect Master of Howran Sword Sect Wuzong Peak Stage. 11th place, Sect Master of Four Symbols Sect Wuzong Peak Stage. Mysterious Items List. Xianling Fruit, you can become Wuzong if you take it. Nirvana Fruit, you can be reborn and improve your aptitude. Emperor Sword, Lingyun Sword, Taixien Ruler, Heavenly Demon Sword, Glazed Abyss Rainbow Sword, Sky Halberd. Celestial Elixir, you can increase your power by 100 years. Mo Luo Flower, you can heal all internal and external injuries. Demon Subduing Pestle, Ghost King Blade. As the war between the righteous and the devil approached, the Central Plains, which was already full of undercurrents, became more and more intense because of the appearance of the four lists. Restlessness was everywhere. All the forces that discovered the four lists had different reactions, but they were all verifying the authenticity of the list. Since then, the prelude to the war between the righteous and the devil had begun. In the Howran Sword Sect, Yi Howran said, Tianzong, your four lists have made the whole Central Plains restless. According to this development, the war between the righteous and the devil in a few years will be far more tragic than the last one. Fortunately, we hid our strength. Although the related rankings are quite high, the Howran Sword Sect's current strength is enough to control the situation. Yi Tianzong said, Father, after the Battle of Xian New Temple, we exposed part of our strength, which has already made the other super sects feel threatened. This action is to find something for them to do, so that they won't always keep an eye on us. Although the spies sent by these forces can't get close to Tiangang Peak, it's quite annoying to be watched like this. Fortunately, we can also find trouble for them. No matter whether the lists are true or not, they will always check and verify, won't they? Yi Howran said, Well, you're right. Almost everyone in the world can't escape fame and fortune. Whether it's true or not, those who are ambitious will definitely not be willing to submit to others. The Central Plains will be interesting to watch. I'll leave the sect's affairs to you. I'd better go and comprehend the Howran scripture. After saying that, Yi Howran left to continue comprehending the Howran scripture. Just as Yi Howran said, because of the appearance of the four lists, challenges, battles, and killings in the Central Plains became more and more intense because of the rankings, beauties, and rankings on the list. Almost all the people on the genius list were outstanding disciples of the major forces, and there were less than 10 rogue cultivators. Those who were ranked lower challenged those who were ranked higher, wanting to prove that they were not weaker than others, while those who were not on the list wanted to challenge those who were on the list to see if they were worthy of their name. The beauties on the 100-flower list were pursued and coveted by many warriors, and they fought fiercely for them. Countless killings and battles were staged every day. For the challenges of the geniuses on the genius list, there were successes and failures. Those who succeeded would advance in the rankings or be on the list, while those who failed would either accumulate strength and wait for an opportunity to fight again, or be disheartened and disappear from the crowd. However, the top 20 positions basically did not change. Time passed, and 3 years passed unknowingly. In these 3 years, the battles and killings in the Central Plains became more and more frequent. Although the major forces tried their best to restrain themselves, they gradually got out of control. Among the four lists, the genius list was updated every half a year. Every time it was updated, not only would the rankings change, but there would also be new people on the list and old people off the list. The 100-flower list was updated every year, and the rankings were also not fixed. There were new people on the list and old people off the list. Even Yi Tianzong and Ling Xinyue had been challenged, but he sent the Haoran Sword Sect's disciples on the Dragon and Phoenix list to deal with them. He had no interest in participating in such boring things. The killings and battles between warriors became more and more frequent, and in contrast, the lives of ordinary people could be said to be in an abyss of suffering. They trembled in fear, and if they were not careful, they would be implicated by the battles and die an unnatural death. The Zhou dynasty occupied most of the Central Plains, and under the intentional or unintentional actions of the various sects, countless people died and were injured every day. The government's strength was simply not enough to deal with it. Because of this, the king of the Great Zhou dynasty was furious several times, wanting to send a large number of troops to hunt down the rebellious warriors, but due to various reasons, he was unable to do so. Deaths and injuries often occurred in the areas under the jurisdiction of the other sections. In the beginning, they would send their disciples to deal with them, but as time passed and the war between the righteous and demonic sides approached, these deaths and injuries became more and more frequent. Because they were all accumulating strength for the war between the righteous and demonic sides, their energy was limited. In the end, as long as they did not cause trouble in the core areas of the major sects, the other sects would turn a blind eye to it. However, in the areas under the jurisdiction of the Haoran Sword Sect, these occurrences were extremely rare. Once they occurred, the Haoran Sword Sect would exterminate all the troublemakers with lightning speed. Moreover, because of Yi Tianzong's measures, everyone in the Haoran Sword Sect had cultivated the basic body forging technique and were also equipped with basic martial arts technique. If ordinary warriors wanted to cause trouble, they would not be able to return alive. Those who were martial warriors and above would be dealt with by the people of the Haoran Sword Sect stationed in the various cities. In the past 4 years, the Haoran Sword Sect had increased the number of disciples recruited. Every year, there would be 60,000 people, and a total of 240,000 people were recruited. Now, the number of disciples in the Haoran Sword Sect had reached 460,000 people. Under the unrestricted supply of medicinal pills and various measures, the newly recruited disciples advanced rapidly. The strength of the Haoran Sword Sect had once again increased by a large margin. The strength of the Haoran Sword Sect had also increased by a large margin. The strength of the various cities had also doubled. In addition to guarding the areas under the jurisdiction of the sect, the disciples of the Haoran Sword Sect were also sent out to quell disturbances under Yi Tianzong's orders. In the past, it was mentioned that the Haoran Sword Sect had its own network in the Zhou dynasty. Since its establishment thousands of years ago, countless disciples of the Haoran Sword Sect had taken up positions in the Zhou dynasty. Even if they died, their descendants would basically continue to be part of the Haoran Sword Sect's connections in the Zhou dynasty. Although they would be targeted by the aristocratic families of the Zhou dynasty if they took up a position in the Zhou dynasty, as long as they did not seek death, their lives would not be in danger. After all, the Zhou dynasty still needed the power of the various sects to deal with the sects outside the domain. As long as it was not a capital offense, it would not be too excessive. After thousands of years, the Haoran Sword Sect had already accumulated a very large network of connections in the Zhou dynasty. In addition, a few years ago, the Haoran Sword Sect had presented a high-yield grain seed, which shocked the entire court. The great Zhou king was very pleased and gave a generous reward, causing the Haoran Sword Sect's network in the Great Zhou Imperial Court to take another step forward and enter the core decision-making level. Yi Tianzong had already communicated with the Haoran Sword Sect's network of connections in the Zhou dynasty within a radius of 5,000 miles. He sent out 50,000 Haoran disciples to assist them in quelling the disturbances caused by the cultivators under their rule. Everything went very smoothly. Under the leadership of the official constables, The disciples of Howran, who had tyrannical fighting strength, dealt with these rioting cultivators. Except for those who ran away quickly, they were all beaten up and arrested. While protecting the local people, they did not forget to promote the ideals and spirit of the Howran sword sect. This made the Zhou dynasty's officials very happy. The Howran sword sect's network of connections also praised their own sect for being awesome. There would be no harm if there was no comparison. Compared to the Howran sword sect helping the Zhou dynasty to quell the disturbances caused by the cultivators of the super sects, the Zhou dynasty's decision-making level was not pleasing to the eye. They suppressed and retaliated against the super sects' network of connections in the Zhou dynasty. Of course, these super sects were very unhappy about this. However, they could not contend against the colossus that was the Zhou dynasty. They could only curse in their hearts. As for the Howran sword sect, they did not have so many misgivings. They kept looking for trouble with the Howran sword sect in the imperial court. Outside the imperial court, there was no action for the time being. However, in a few months, the war between the righteous and demonic paths would break out. At that time, the Howran sword sect would definitely have to bear the consequences. Just like this, under the efforts of the various factions, 3 months finally passed. The new year had arrived. While everyone was celebrating the new year, all the factions were silently making their final preparations. Once the first month passed, it would be the time for the various factions to brutally slaughter each other. Chapter 33. Amidst the complicated thoughts of all the powers, the first month of the lunar month finally passed. The battle between the righteous and demonic factions had begun. Apart from the disciples guarding the sects, all the disciples of the major sects had gathered at the borders of the various sections. At the borders of the Zhou dynasty, the Western Ancient Kingdom, the Hu Kingdom of the northern frontier, and the Lin Kingdom of the southern frontier, all the sects were heavily armed. The situation was on the verge of breaking out. Within the Central Plains, the demonic faction's first-rate sect, Bloodblade Peak, took the lead in attacking the righteous faction's first-rate sect, Xiang sect. Following that, all the other sects began to fight one after another. All the sects' battles were divided into different levels. Super sects against super sects, first-rate sects against first-rate sects, second-rate sects against second-rate sects, and third-rate sects against third-rate sections. Of course, if a sect was not afraid of death and insisted on provoking a high-grade sect, then they could only pray for their own good fortune. As expected, the super sects that had long been fearful of the Howran sword sect and even harbored resentment towards the Howran sword sect tacitly joined forces and surrounded the Howran sword sect. Other than the 3 super sects closest to the Howran sword sect, Zhenbu Gate, Demon Sword Sect, and Shura Sect, who had each gathered 300,000 people to attack the Howran sword sect, there were also hundreds of sects that belonged to cultivators who had been suppressed by the disciples of the Howran sword sect. Under the leadership of some other super sects, the 300,000 allied forces, along with Zhenbu Gate, Demon Sword Sect, and Shura Sect, formed 4 forces to attack the Howran sword sect. The Howran sword sect, who had long been paying close attention to this, sent out 100,000 disciples of the Howran sect. Under the leadership of the elders of the Elder Hall, they were stationed in the 4 border cities to stop the enemy's invasion. When the 2 sides met, there was no superfluous words, and a fierce battle immediately broke out. The elders of the Howran sword sect each fought 1 against 3, holding back Wu Zongjing's experts. Because the remaining Howran sword sect disciples were at a disadvantage in terms of numbers, they cooperated with each other to form a sword formation to resist the enemy's attack. There was no such thing as a siege. Everyone had the intention to kill the enemy and engaged in close combat outside the city. Other than besieging the Howran sword sect, Zhenbu Gate was still at war with Xian Nu Temple, Demon Sword Sect, and Dry Bone Mountain. Demon Sword Sect was also at war with Xian Nu Temple and Medicine King Valley. Shura Gate was still at war with 4 Elephants Sect. Sky Demon Temple was at war with its archenemy, Zen Buddhist Temple, Lingyun Hall and Medicine King Valley. Ghost King Sect was at war with Lingyun Hall, Kunlun Sect, and Four Elephants Sect. Lingyun Hall was not only at war with Sky Demon Temple, Ghost King Sect, but also with 100 Poisons Sect. In short, every super sect was at war with at least 2 or 3 other super sects. The super sects of both the righteous and the evil sects were all in a mess. On the battlefield, which had hundreds of thousands of people, there were people injured and dying at every moment. The number of casualties every day was uncountable, and the number of ordinary people who were affected and died unnatural deaths was also innumerable. The first, second, and third-rate sects were also in a state of war. Because there were hundreds and thousands of sects, the number of casualties was even greater than that of the super sect. The largest battlefield was at the borders of the Central Plains, the western regions, the northern borderline, and the southern wasteland. The Zhou dynasty was at the borders of the western regions, the Hu kingdom of the northern borderline, and the Lin kingdom of the southern wasteland. Tens of millions of soldiers were stationed at each border to resist the invasion from the 3 countries. On the vast and tragic battlefield, blood flowed like rivers. There were no so-called battle formations, only naked confrontation. At least hundreds of thousands of people died in every battle. At this moment, human lives were so insignificant and insignificant. Externally, the great Zhou dynasty resisted the invasion of the other 3 regions. Internally, the great Zhou dynasty's remaining tens of millions of soldiers were divided into dozens of groups to guard the important regions. They were to deter those ambitious people who wanted to take advantage of the situation to cause chaos and prevent the great Zhou dynasty's backyard from burning. As for the villages and towns, they had no time to care about them. As time passed, the battle between the righteous and the demonic did not show any signs of stopping. Instead, it became more and more intense, and the degree of devastation far surpassed the previous battle. However, after this battle, the Zhou dynasty did not have to worry about food. Because of the promotion of high-yield crops, the production of food had exploded. The Zhou dynasty had a lot of stamina. The Central Plains had a population of tens of billions, and the Zhou dynasty occupied most of the land. They had a lot of people, and if they did not have enough soldiers, they could just recruit more soldiers. After all, every country had a limited number of standing soldiers. After the battle with the standing soldiers, they would continue to fight with the new soldiers and see who could outlast the other. On the other side, the Howran Sword sect, which was targeted by both the righteous and demonic super sects, had a slight change in the situation during the 1 month since the battle broke out. Originally, the Howran Sword sect had 400,000 people to fight against the 4 forces 1,200,000 people. At the beginning of the battle, because of the huge difference in numbers, although the Howran Sword sect's disciples were stronger than the other super sects of the same level and had a sword formation to rely on, they were still in a defensive position. Both sides were basically evenly matched, but as the battle progressed and more enemies were killed, the disadvantage in numbers slowly decreased. After a month of fighting, the Howran Sword sect's disciples had lost more than 10,000 people. Even Wu Zongjing's elders had fallen. On the other hand, the enemy side had lost more than 40,000 people, and Wu Zongjing had lost more than 40 people. The battle between the righteous and demonic super sects was not an open battle. Instead, they used poison, hidden weapons, ambushes, and various other methods. Thus, Yi Haoran and Yi Tianzong had long since been mentally prepared for the deaths of the Howran Sword sect's disciples. Fortunately, not only did the Howran Sword sect's disciples wear refined armor, they also cultivated their true energy and body. They also carried 100 herb pills, golden sore medicine, and vitality pills. The core disciples at Wu Ling realm even carried detoxification pills that could cure deadly poisons. When faced with the enemy's despicable methods, the Howran Sword sect's disciples would give them a taste of their own medicine. Otherwise, the number of casualties they would suffer from would at least double the number of people who fought against them in turns and ambushes. Originally, they were already at a disadvantage in terms of numbers. Taking turns to exhaust your stamina, and even when you were surrounded, the others would suddenly shoot you with hidden weapons or ambush you. This would definitely catch you off guard. Most of the Howren sword sect's disciples who died or were injured in this way. Otherwise, if it was just a simple fight, not boasting, even if there were another 100,000 Howren sword sect's disciples, they would still be able to withstand it. There would not be such a large number of casualties. Although they knew the whole story, Yi Tianzong and his family still felt very pained at the loss of more than 10,000 Howren sword sect's disciples, as well as the deaths of more than 10 elders. I really didn't expect our Howren sword sect to have so much face. In addition to Zhenbu Gate, Demon Sword Sect, and Azura Gate, even Lingyun Hall, Sky Demon Temple, and Medicine King Valley came to interfere. They really think highly of us. These bastards, as long as we survive this siege, they will pay the price sooner or later. Also, the Xian New Temple sent people to ask for reinforcements. They can't withstand the attacks of Zhenbu Gate, Demon Sword Sect, and a few other first-rate sections. Their defense line has been pushed back hundreds of miles, and more than 30,000 people have died. They urgently need our reinforcements, Yi Haoren said with a somewhat gloomy expression. Yi Tianzong. How infuriating. This Xian New Temple is really a scammer of an ally. Yi Tianzong simply didn't know what to say. According to the information they obtained, Zhenbu Gate, Demon Sword Sect, and a few other first-rate sects gathered together to attack the Xian New Temple with a total of less than 200,000 people. In the past few years, with the support of food, pills, and weapons provided by the Howren Sword Sect, the Xian New Temple already had more than 230,000 people. Moreover, with the help of pills, even the newly recruited disciples had basically reached the warrior realm. In addition to the local battle, based on the defense of the city, the Xian New Temple was unexpectedly pushed back hundreds of miles, and more than 30,000 people died or were injured. Yi Haoren really didn't know how the Xian New Temple ended up like this. Yi Tianzong looked at Ling Xinyue speechlessly. After knowing the specific situation, Ling Xinyue also felt embarrassed to look at Yi Tianzong. There would be no harm if there was no comparison. The Howren Sword Sect had 400,000 people against a total of 1,200,000 people from various supersections. Under such a huge disadvantage, the Xian New Temple's battle record was simply unsightly. The Xian New Temple's battle record was clearly superior, but they were completely defeated. They even had to ask the Howren Sword Sect for help. As the former young master of the Xian New Temple, Ling Xinyue felt that the Xian New Temple was simply too weak. They were completely dragging the Howren Sword Sect down. Now that the Xian New Temple has lost the battle and is being pressured by Zhenbu Gate, Demon Sword Sect, and several other first-rate sects, I think it's time for them to ask for help. Since that's the case, our opportunity has also come. How about this? This time, little uncle, grandmother, Xinyue, and I will lead 10,000 disciples to the Xian New Temple to solve all the problems together. Also, we will send 10,000 disciples to each of the 4 border battlefields. As for the remaining elders, other than those who must stay behind, we will send all of them out. This will also increase the strength of our disciples and reduce the number of casualties. The remaining 10,000 will accompany grandfather, father, and mother to stay behind at Tiangang Peak. I think this should be enough to prevent any accidents. Yi Tianzong thought about it and said, "Okay, let's do as you say." Yi Haoren thought about it and agreed. Then, Yi Tianzong, Ling Xinyue, Yi Haoyun, and Li Qingyao led 10,000 Howren disciples to support the Xian New Temple. Yi Tianzong had already told Ling Xinyue about the plan to annex the Xian New Temple. Ling Xinyue didn't have any objections to it. Not to mention that she had already left the Xian New Temple and married Yi Tianzong a long time ago, becoming his woman. Although she would definitely do her best to help the Xiannu Temple if it was in trouble, Yi Tianzong's plan wasn't to destroy the Xiannu Temple. On the contrary, Ling Xinyue was quite happy to see the Xiannu Temple become a part of the Haoran Sword sect. After being in the Haoran Sword sect for so many years, Ling Xinyue had a better understanding of the Haoran Sword sect's strength and foundation. She deeply felt the huge gap between the Xiannu Temple and the Haoran Sword sect. It could be said that under Yi Tianzong's guidance and the Haoran Sword sect's development, annexing the Xiannu Temple was something that would happen sooner or later. The Haoran Sword sect didn't want to see another ally that would drag them down. Since they were going to annex the Xiannu Temple sooner or later, it was good to take advantage of the war between the righteous and the devil to reduce their losses. After 7 days of rapid travel, Yi Tianzong and the others finally reached the outermost line of defense of the Xiannu Temple. Because Yi Tianzong and the others were in a hurry, they rode horses and sat in carriages. Therefore, the enemy forces that attacked the Xiannu Temple, such as the Zhenbu Gate and the Devil Sword sect, had already received the news in advance. They knew that the Haoran Sword sect's strength was very strong. After the first ambush failed, the forces of Zhenbu Gate, the Devil Sword sect, and the other forces cancelled their plans to ambush the Haoran Sword sect again. It was a big taboo to fight on both sides. Therefore, they reluctantly made way. In the end, the people of the Haoran Sword sect entered the city and joined the people of the Xiannu Temple. Chapter 34. The disciples of the Haoran Sword sect and the people of the Xiannu Temple met up, leaving behind 10 elders and 10,000 disciples to assist the Xiannu Temple in defending the defensive line. Yi Tianzong, Ling Xinyue, Yi Haoyun, and Li Qingyao went straight to the headquarters of the Xiannu Temple, the Xiannu Peak. The disciples of the Haoran Sword sect divided into several teams and entered the several cities defended by the Xiannu Temple. After the disciples of the Haoran Sword sect entered the cities, they repaired the flawed defensive line of the Xiannu Temple and then joined the battle. With the addition of the disciples of the Haoran Sword sect, the defensive line of the Xiannu Temple stabilized. The Zhenbu Gate, the Devil Sword sect, and several other first-class sects suddenly felt that the difficulty of attacking the Xiannu Temple had increased by several levels, and the casualties had obviously increased by several times. The forces of the Zhenbu Gate, the Devil Sword sect, and other forces cursed and regretted their miscalculation. Yi Tianzong and the others advanced quickly and arrived at the Xiannu Peak in less than 2 days. When they arrived at the foot of the Xiannu Peak, no one came to pick them up even after a long time had passed. Realizing that something might have happened, Yi Tianzong and the others quickly rushed to the Xiannu Palace under the guidance of Ling Xinyue. At this moment, the atmosphere in the Xiannu Palace was tense. Just as Yi Tianzong and the others expected, because of the bad situation, the Xiannu Temple had awakened the ancestors who were sleeping in the secret territory 2 days ago. This time, 3 people were awakened. One of them happened to be Lin Guo's ancestor, Lin Xianyue, who was in the middle stage of Marquis Wu, and the other 2 were in the early stage of Marquis Wu. The appearance of the 3 calmed down the somewhat panicked atmosphere in the Xiannu Temple. However, when Lin Xianyue learned that her family had colluded with the Zhenbu Gate and participated in the rebellion and was exterminated, she flew into a rage. She did not care about the fact that the righteous Dao and the devil Dao were at war right now. In a fit of anger, she injured the martial cultivation of the people from the Xiannu Temple who had participated in the extermination of her family and imprisoned all of them. Then, she summoned the Xiannu Temple Palace Master Zi Yunxian and Li Qingshi, who were outside to immediately return to the Xiannu Peak. After Zi Yunxian and Li Qingshi returned to Xiannu Peak, Lin Xianyue did not give them a chance to explain themselves. She immediately attacked them, causing them to be severely injured and locked them up in the dungeon. Today, when Yi Tianzong and the others arrived at the Mystic Nyu Peak, Lin Xianyue and the other two Marquis Wu in the mystic Nyu Palace summoned all the people above the Wu Ling realm who stayed behind to guard the Xiannu Temple and gathered in the mystic Nyu Palace. She wanted to publicly punish Zi Yunxian and Li Qingshi to avenge her family. Perhaps they were really from the same bloodline. Lin Xuanyue's face also had a mean expression. She occupied the position of the palace master of the Xiannu Temple and looked down at Zi Yunxian and Li Qingshi, who were kneeling in the main hall because of their serious injuries. She said with a fierce and resentful tone, "Zi Yunxian, Li Qingshi, as the palace master and grand elder of the Xiannu Temple, you two can't distinguish right from wrong and invert black from white. You maliciously framed the vice-palace master, and also viciously eradicated the Lin family. You colluded with the Haoran sword sect, and tried to overthrow the Xiannu Temple. You are simply insane and unforgivable. I represent the ancestors of the Xiannu Temple to announce that you are expelled from the Xiannu Temple. Your cultivation will be abolished, and you will be sentenced to death." After Lin Xianyue finished speaking, the pressure of Marquis Wu's intermediate stage spread throughout the Xiannu Temple. Hundreds of people in the Xiannu Temple did not dare to speak up for Zi Yunxian and Li Qingshi. As for the two Marquis Wu's early-stage cultivators, they only frowned and did not say anything. After all, they were not related to Zi Yunxian and Li Qingshi. Moreover, their cultivation was not as good as Lin Xuanyue's. They did not want to offend Lin Xianyue for two unrelated people. They could still live for a long time in the secret territory. They did not care about the people from Wuzong who were not qualified to enter the secret territory. Even if these two people were the palace master and grand elder of the Xiannu Temple, they could just replace them. After all, there were plenty of people in the Xiannu Temple. Zi Yunxian and Li Qingshi looked at Lin Xianyue with grief and indignation. Their hearts were filled with coldness and anger. They were angry that Lin Xianyue had distorted the truth and was lawless. She had actually broken the rules of the Xiannu Temple when the righteous Dao and the devil Dao were fighting. She had even attacked the two of them. The other two Marquis Wu's Xiannu Temple's ancestors and the other people in the Xiannu Temple were bitterly disappointed. In the face of Lin Xuanyue's blatant revenge and violation of the rules of the Xiannu Temple, she had actually turned a blind eye and did nothing. Zi Yunxian and Li Qingshi were both seriously injured. They had already lost the ability to fight back. The two of them had already broken the jar and smashed it. Since they were already in a dead end and could not avoid it, they might as well shed all pretense of cordiality. Zi Yunxian said mockingly, Lin Gue and the Lin family participated in the rebellion. They deserved to die. I, Zi Yunxian, have never regretted it. However, I did not expect that you, Lin Xianyue, as a senior, would be so mean and shameless. I did not expect that the ancestors of the Xiannu Temple would ignore the rules of the Xiannu Temple and allow you, Lin Xianyue, to distort the truth and take revenge. I was too naive. I worked so hard and contributed so much to the Xiannu Temple. In the end, no one was willing to speak up for me. It's good that the Xiannu Temple has been destroyed. Li Qingshi endured the worsening injuries in her body and said with a cold smile, you guys can be proud. You won't be able to enjoy the glory for long. My sister will avenge me. The people of the Haoran sword sect will be here soon. When they arrive, it will be the time of your death. When Li Qingshi said this, everyone in the Xiannu Palace, except for Lin Xianyue and the other two Marquis Wu realm people, were a little flustered. They knew that Li Qingshi's sister was the mother of the Haoran sword sect's sect leader. When Lin Gue's rebellion was quelled, Li Qingya and Yi Haoyun's terrifying strength was still fresh in their memory. In addition, they knew that the Haoran sword sect was very powerful. Once the news of Li Qingshi's death spread out, the Haoran sword sect would definitely attack in anger. Maybe they would even destroy the Xiannu Temple. Lin Xianyue and the other two did not know the specific situation. When they saw the flustered expressions of the people of the Xiannu temple, they could not help but scold angrily. What are you panicking for? So what if the Haoran sword sect is here? Now that the righteous Tao and the devil Tao are fighting, they can't even take care of themselves. With their strength, even if they come, I will make sure that they will not be able to return alive with some Wu Zongjing. Now Ziyunxian, Li Qingshi, prepare to die. After saying that, Lin Xianyue was about to kill Ziyunxian and Li Qingshi. She was too lazy to cripple their cultivation. After all, they would die in the end. Bastard! How dare you, witch? How dare you hurt my woman and aunt? You are courting death. Just when Lin Xianyue was about to kill Ziyunxian and Li Qingshi, a deafening shout came from outside the Xiannu temple. Following that, 4 figures appeared in front of Ziyunxian and Li Qingshi. The people who came were Yi Tianzong and the other 3. After arriving at the Xiannu temple, Li Qingya quickly helped her sister Li Qingshi up. After checking her injuries, she gave her a vitality pill. Yi Haoyun also carried Ziyunxian and fed her a vitality pill. This time, Ziyunxian did not resist. Ever since he helped the Xiannu temple to quell the rebellion, Yi Haoyun would come to the Xiannu temple many times every year. He would think of all kinds of ways to get close to Ziyunxian. He would also guide Ziyunxian on her martial arts and give her pills to increase her cultivation. The two of them were already very familiar with each other. However, due to the rules of the Xiannu temple, Ziyunxian could only helplessly reject Yi Haoyun's intentions every time. Yi Haoyun, who knew Ziyunxuan's feelings, would naturally not give up. Although Ziyunxian rejected him, Yi Haoyun would continue to express his feelings every time they met. This time, Ziyunxian, who was seriously injured and abandoned by the Xiannu temple, no longer rejected Yi Haoyun's embrace. She had already let go of the fetters in her heart. She no longer stupidly contributed to the Xiannu temple. Being hugged by Yi Haoyun, Ziyunxuan's pale face revealed a trace of a smile. She said to Yi Haoyun, "I have already been expelled from the Xiannu temple. Now I am living for myself. Are you still willing to accept me?" Yi Haoyun said with heartache and anger, "Yunxian, no matter what, I will always be by your side. From today onwards, you are my woman. When we return to the Haoran sword sect, we will get married. Now, just watch me take revenge for you." The appearance of Yi Tianzong and the others caused the atmosphere in the Xiannu palace to become even more tense. Lin Xianyue angrily asked, "Who are you? How dare you trespass into the Xiannu temple?" She did not notice. The other people in the Xiannu palace were already panicking. They said to each other, "The people from the Haoran sword sect are here." In the face of Lin Xuanyue's questioning, Yi Tianzong and the others ignored her. Yi Haoyun asked Li Qingya, "Mother, how is my aunt's injury?" Li Qingya held back her anger and replied, "Fortunately, she was only seriously injured. She has already taken some pills and stabilized her injury." Looking at the sudden appearance of Yi Tianzong and the others, they actually ignored everyone and talked to each other. Lin Xianyue and the other 2, who felt that their dignity had been violated, were furious. Since they were in the headquarters of the mysterious Lady Palace, they had no scruples. One of them, who was at the early stage of the martial marquis realm, asked sternly, "Bastard, are you deaf? Who are you? Why did you trespass into the Xiannu temple? You have to give us an explanation. Otherwise, you will know the consequences of angering the Xiannu temple." Looking at Lin Xianyue and the others who were so angry that they seemed to have lost their minds, Yi Tianzong could not help but think to himself, "Do we have a halo that reduces our intelligence? Why are the 3 people in front of me like idiots? Did they sleep for a long time and become stupid? Didn't they hear that the people below have already said our identity?" Thinking up to here, Yi Tianzong, who was feeling a little uncomfortable, suddenly lost interest in bickering. He was also not interested in knowing their identities. Since they were all enemies, he did not even greet them and directly sent out a dominating world fist towards the 3 of them. Yi Tianzong could clearly see the cultivation level of the three of them at a glance. In order to let Zi Yunxian and his grand aunt Li Qingshi take revenge personally, Yi Tianzong restrained most of his strength. It should be known that Yi Tianzong's strength was suppressed by the world. Although he could only exert the peak of Marquis Wu, he was invincible among his peers. Even if he restrained most of his strength, Lin Xianyue and the others still could not resist Yi Tianzong's attack. It was as if a mountain was pressing down on them horizontally. With just one punch, all three of them were seriously injured and fell to the ground. Everyone in the Xiannu temple was shocked, including Zi Yunxian and Li Qingshi. They were Marquis Wu realm experts who were above Wuzong. How could they be knocked down with one punch? Could it be that the Marquis Wu realm I saw was fake? Even Yi Haoyun and Li Qingya, who knew the strength of Yi Tianzong, could not help but be amazed. They had cultivated the divine martial heavenly skill taught by Yi Tianzong. Although their strength had skyrocketed by dozens of times and they could fight against Marquis Wu realm experts, they could not easily defeat three Marquis Wu realm experts like Yi Tianzong. Chapter 35. Yi Tianzong had already expected the result after the punch. He clapped his hands carelessly and said casually, "They are already seriously injured and can't move. If you have a grudge, take revenge. If you have a grudge, let's complain." As soon as he finished speaking, while the others were still in a daze, Ling Xianyue had already stepped forward and slapped Lin Xianyue. With a loud slap, Lin Xuanyue's face was slapped. After Yi Tianzong's guidance, Ling Xianyue's physical cultivation had also caught up. With a heavy slap, not only did Lin Xuanyue's head become a little dizzy, even her face suddenly swelled up. Lin Xianyue, who was used to being superior, had never been humiliated like this before. She didn't care about the situation at all and shouted with hatred, "Bitch, how dare you hit me!" Before she could finish her words, Ling Xianyue slapped her again. The other side of Lin Xuanyue's face was also swollen. Before she could finish her words, Ling Xianyue slapped Lin Xuanyue's face like raindrop. She said while slapping Lin Xianyue, "Bitch, how dare you hurt my master? I'll slap you to death." Seeing Ling Xianyue's actions, not to mention the others, even Yi Tianzong was surprised. He didn't know that this girl had become so fierce. She was usually very obedient. Lin Xianyue was already seriously injured. In addition, Ling Xianyue had unscrupulously scolded and slapped her in front of everyone. Boundless anger and humiliation surged into her heart. Due to the excessive imbalance of her mental state, Lin Xianyue fainted without a sound. Seeing that Lin Xianyue had fainted because of her slap, Ling Xianyue was still angry and kicked her. Then, she turned around and returned to Yi Tianzong's side. Noticing that everyone was looking at her strangely, Ling Xianyue realized that her behavior just now was a little inappropriate. She couldn't help but feel embarrassed. She stuck her tongue out at Yi Tianzong shyly. She was so cute that everyone was dazzled. The people of Mystic Maiden Palace could not help but feel shocked. Is this still our young palace master? She's so fierce and knows how to act cute? Not to mention others, even Yi Tianzong, who stayed with Ling Xianyue all the time, was dazzled by Ling Xianyue. He couldn't help thinking, this girl is not only becoming more and more beautiful, but also better at acting cute. But I like it. After Ling Xianyue acted cute in front of Yi Tianzong, she turned around and went to Zi Yunxian. She asked with concern, "Master, are you all right? How's your injury?" Zi Yunxian looked at Ling Xianyue strangely and said, "I'm fine. My injury is stable now." After a short pause, she continued, "Xianyue, you're very good. What else can I say?" Zi Yunxian looked at Xianyue. Xianyue's personality was very different from her impression of her. Yi Tianzong coughed and interrupted everyone's thoughts. He said to Yi Haoyun and Li Qingya, "Uncle, grandmother, I'll wait for you outside with Xianyue. I'll leave the rest to you." After that, Yi Tianzong took Ling Xianyue out of the Xiannu temple. Ling Xianyue showed them around the Xiannu temple. After Yi Tianzong took Ling Xinyue out of the Xiannu temple, Yi Haoyun and Li Qingya first confirmed the identity of the remaining people in the Xiannu temple with Zi Yunxian and Li Qingshi. After confirming that they weren't their confidants, Yi Haoyun and Li Qingya used a special method to threaten and control everyone. Then they used all their strength to help Zi Yunxian and Li Qingshi heal their injuries. With the help of the two people, Zi Yunxian and Li Qingshi quickly recovered from most of their injuries. Then the four of them came to the side hall. Yi Haoyun and Li Qingya told Zi Yunxian and Li Qingshi the purpose of this trip. Looking at the silent two people, Yi Haoyun said, "Yunxian, Aunt, it's not that we want to take advantage of you. It's just that we want to avoid unnecessary trouble and losses. That's why we brought this up to you. We hope that you can help us. Maybe you think that I'm twisting words and forcing logic. But what you don't know is that the strength of my Haoran sword sect is definitely beyond your imagination. In this war between the righteous and demonic sects, my Haoran sword sect was besieged by more than 1.2 million super sects. But we only sent out 400,000 disciples and elders to resist the enemy's attack. The loss ratio is 1:4. As long as we persevere, as the difference in numbers decreases, the loss ratio will definitely increase. The winner will definitely be our Haoran sword sect. Moreover, we still have 60,000 disciples on guard. You also know my strength. As long as I make a move, unless there's a Marquis Wu, no one can be my opponent. Me, mother, father, big brother, sister-in-law, and Tianzong. Anyone can quickly kill Wu Zongjing and turn the situation around. The war between the righteous and demonic sects is just a training ground for our Haoran sword sect. What's more, after the war between the righteous and demonic sects, we still have a shocking plan. No mistakes are allowed. Once we succeed, the Xiannu temple will be a stumbling block for our expansion. We will definitely wipe it out. There will be no room for negotiation. If the Xiannu temple joins our Haoran sword sect now, it will definitely be a great fortune for you. Don't doubt it, because you can't imagine how great our plan is. Once it succeeds, our Haoran sword sect will become a holy land and leave the ranks of super sects. Yunxian, you know me. Do you think I'm the kind of person who uses flowery words to scare people?" Zi Yunxian and Li Qingshi looked at each other and smiled bitterly. Finally, Zi Yunxian said, "Tell us, what do you want us to do?" Hearing Zi Yunxuan's answer, Yi Haoyun and Li Qingya showed a happy expression. Yi Haoyun liked Zi Yunxian, and Li Qingshi was Li Qingya's younger sister. If it wasn't because they were afraid that Zi Yunxian and Li Qingshi would have a grudge against each other, the Haoran sword sect would have already annexed the Xiannu temple. In the past, the Haoran sword sect might have needed to support the Xiannu temple to share their burden. But now, the Xiannu temple was dragging them down. If it was in the past, Zi Yunxian and Li Qingshi might argue and not compromise. But after experiencing a lot of ups and downs in the past 2 days, their hearts had changed a lot. They no longer put the Xiannu temple first. In addition, Yi Haoyun had clearly stated that even if they didn't agree, the Haoran sword sect would forcefully annex them. At that time, they wouldn't discuss with them. After considering many aspects, the two could only agree. As for the consequences of agreeing, the two said that since they had a big backer in the Haoran sword sect, who could do anything to them. After reaching a consensus, the four of them started to discuss the plan of annexing the Haoran sword sect in the side hall. Yi Haoyun called Yi Tianzong and Ling Xinyue, who were touring the Xiannu peak, to participate in the discussion. In the end, they decided to keep it a secret. First, the confidants of Zi Yunxian and Li Qingshi, who were locked up in the dungeon, would be released to treat their injuries. They would be left behind to guard the Xiannu peak. Those who weren't their confidants would all be sent to the front line of the battlefield. Then, the disciples of the Haoran sword sect who were at the front line would avoid them and let them face the enemy's attack directly. Yi Haoyun would be left behind to guard the Xiannu temple in case of any accidents. After the battle between the righteous and demonic paths, the Xiannu Temple would use the excuse of not having enough strength to invite the Haoran Sword sect to help the Xiannu Temple defend the area and strengthen the relationship with the lower-level disciples of the Xiannu Temple. After the Haoran Sword sect's plan was successful, the Xiannu Temple would announce the annexation of the Haoran Sword sect and become a part of the Haoran Sword sect. At that time, the entire Xiannu Temple would not have any objections. After deciding on a rough plan, everyone split up and went their separate ways. Yi Haoyun would guard the Xiannu Temple. At the same time, he would command the disciples of the Haoran Sword sect to continue helping the Xiannu Temple maintain the defensive line. Zi Yunxian and Li Qingshi went to rescue their confidant. Li Qingyao, Yi Tianzong, and Ling Xinyue stayed for 2 days before returning to the Haoran Sword sect. 7 days later, Yi Tianzong and the other 2 returned to the Haoran Sword sect. Yi Haoran asked, "How was it? Did it go smoothly?" Yi Tianzong replied, "Yes. Fortunately, we arrived in time. Finally, there was no danger. The plan went smoothly." Then, Yi Tianzong told Yi Haoran and Yi Yuanshan what happened and the plan they discussed. After that, Yi Tianzong continued, "Now that we have achieved our goal of training our disciples, it's time to make a move. We have spent a lot of resources to nurture our disciples. It's enough that we lost so many of them. We can't have any more losses. Next, we have to find those super sects to settle the account. After this siege, we will go out and fight at their doorstep. This time, we must make our Haoran Sword sect famous in the war between the righteous and demonic paths. We must establish our status as a sect that can't be provoked. This will ensure a stable environment for our future plans." Hearing this, Yi Haoran and the others agreed to make a move to reverse the situation and reduce the casualties of Haoran's disciples. Yi Haoran thought for a moment and said, "We have 6 people now. Someone must guard Tiangang Peak to avoid any accidents. How about this? We will divide into 3 groups and take turns to attack. Tianzong, you are the strongest. You will lead Xinyue. I will be with Meng Xian. Father and mother will be in the same group. Meng Xian and I will guard Tiangang Peak. Father and Tianzong, your 2 groups will attack first." According to the information from the front line, the Shura sect's forces are the weakest. There is no need to worry for the time being. Let's choose one of the other 3 forces to attack. Yi Tianzong thought for a moment and said, "Then I will choose the super sect's allied forces. I haven't really fought for a long time. My hands are itching. I don't know how long they can hold on, hee." His words were full of coldness. Yi Yuanshan said solemnly, "Then Qingya and I will choose the Demon Sword sect. The sneak attack on our sect several decades ago has always been the biggest regret in my life. Now is the time to settle the score. When we attack the Demon Sword sect in the future, I will personally lead a team to attack Demon Sword Peak and take revenge for the siege from several decades ago. I will leave Zhenbu Gate to the 2 of you." Yi Haoran said, "Okay, it's settled." After that, everyone prepared their own things. After tidying up, Yi Tianzong took Ling Xinyue down Tiangang Peak and went straight to the battlefield. Not long after, Yi Yuanshan and Li Qingya also walked down Tiangang Peak and went to the battlefield of the Demon Sword sect. Their departure meant that the situation of the stalemate would soon be reversed. It also meant that a large number of martial ancestor realm powerhouses of the enemy had fallen. It also meant that the Haoran Sword clan had taken the first step to show their prowess and challenge the world. Chapter 36. In just over 2 days, Yi Tianzong and Ling Xinyue arrived at the battlefield between the Haoran Sword sect and the allied forces led by the super sects, Guyuan City. Standing on the city walls of Guyuan City, Yi Tianzong, accompanied by the city lord of Guyuan City, looked at the vast battlefield outside the city where hundreds of thousands of people were fighting. A battle between martial artists was not like a battle between armies. It was not fixed in one area, and the Haoran Sword sect was fighting with their enemies within a radius of 100 miles. In the current situation, due to the difference in numbers, the disciples of the Howren sword sect formed sword formations in 2s and 3s to fend off the enemy. In order to avoid friendly fire, Elder Wu Zongjing of the Howren sword sect was fighting with the enemy's powerful Wu Zongjing on the other side of the battlefield. Both of them were fighting alone against multiple enemies. The battle was in a stalemate, but the ratio of casualties on both sides was obviously much lower than that of the Howren sword sect. In addition to the 10,000 Howren disciples who came to reinforce the Howren sword sect a few days ago, the situation of the battle was developing in the Howren sword sect's favor. Seeing that it was almost evening, the day's battle should be coming to an end soon, Yi Tianzong did not make a move. Right now, everyone on the battlefield had their own opponents, especially Wu Zongjing's. In order to avoid interfering with each other and causing mishaps, there was a considerable distance between each battle circle. Even if Yi Tianzong's strength was heaven-defying and could kill Wu Zongjing as easily as cutting vegetables, he would not be able to achieve much if he made a move now. He could only take advantage of the battle tomorrow when the other side was unguarded and concentrated. Only then would he be able to effectively eliminate the enemy's high-level combatant. Sure enough, in less than half an hour, equivalent to half an hour now, the sound of drums rang out and the battle gradually stopped. Both sides cautiously retreated to distance themselves from each other. After leaving behind some harsh words, they returned to their respective camp. When the elders of the Howren sword sect returned and gathered for a meeting, Yi Tianzong and Ling Xinyue appeared in the meeting hall. Seeing Yi Tianzong appear, everyone was shocked. They hurriedly stood up to greet Yi Tianzong and let Yi Tianzong sit at the head of the table. Yi Tianzong did not decline and sat down directly. Looking at the 60-odd elders in the hall, Yi Tianzong said, "Thank you for your hard work over the past month. The enemy has come with great momentum, and they have the advantage in numbers. They are the strongest force among the 4 forces attacking our Howren sword sect. It was a tough battle. Our Howren sect members and disciples were outnumbered and suffered great losses. In order to thank everyone for their efforts, I hereby announce that everyone's merit points will be doubled in this battle between the righteous and demonic paths." As soon as he said this, a happy smile appeared on the tired faces of all the elders. In fact, even without the merit points reward, everyone would still fight with all their might. After all, they were bound to the Howren sword sect for better or for worse. However, in order to encourage the members of the Howren sword sect to fight bravely, Yi Tianzong had issued various related missions before the battle between the righteous and demonic paths. Now that he announced that the merit points would be doubled, when the battle between the righteous and demonic paths came to an end, they would be able to exchange for a lot of pills and weapons. When the time came, they would be able to increase their strength. Who wouldn't be happy? Seeing the joy on the faces of the elders, Yi Tianzong paused for a moment before continuing. So far, our Howren sword sect has lost more than 10,000 disciples and more than 10 elders. This is the greatest loss our Howren sword sect has suffered in the past few years. Fortunately, our goal of training our disciples has been achieved. The matter of the Xian Nu Temple has also been resolved. It's time to turn the situation around and launch a counterattack. This time, my goal is to join the battle. Tomorrow, I will fight with you and eliminate the enemy's high-end combat power." After Yi Tianzong finished speaking, all the elders in the hall who were happy before were now excited. As long as one was a member of the Howren sword sect, who didn't know that Yi Tianzong was the strongest person in the Howren sword sect? Even now, they still remembered how Yi Tianzong single-handedly dominated the entire sect. They were both at the peak of Wuzong, but Yi Tianzong's strength was completely beyond the scope of Wuzong. Killing those at the peak of Wuzong was as easy as chopping vegetables. It didn't take any effort at all. Once Yi Tianzong made a move, they could all imagine how scared the enemy would be tomorrow. Looking at their excited expressions, Yi Tianzong naturally knew what they were thinking. He then said, "When the battle begins tomorrow, pay attention to not spread out. During the battle, adopt a defensive strategy and try to gather as much as possible. When the time comes, I will wipe out the enemy's Wuzong from the rear. Before they escape, do your best to eliminate as many of the enemy's Wuzong as possible. When they escape, kill as many as you can. If you can't stop them, continue to kill those below Wuzongjing. After Yi Tianzong finished speaking, everyone obeyed. Then Yi Tianzong took out a bottle of pills and distributed them to everyone to recover from their injuries and exhaustion in the battle. Fortunately, no elders died today. Only a few people suffered light injuries. Following the departure of these elders, the news of Yi Tianzong's appearance in Guiyuan City and his participation in the battle tomorrow also spread. The morale of all the Haoran disciples who heard the news was greatly boosted. They were also filled with confidence for tomorrow's battle. It wasn't surprising that the Haoran disciples had such a performance. It was because Yi Tianzong's strength and reputation had long been deeply ingrained in their hearts. In addition to the appearance of the Haoran Sutra 3 years ago, all the Haoran Sword Sect disciples had a clear martial Tao belief and spiritual goal. Yi Tianzong had already become the spiritual leader of everyone in the Haoran Sword Sect, possessing a supreme position. Now that they heard that Yi Tianzong would also be participating in the battle with them, they were naturally excited and full of confidence. On the other hand, the morale of the Haoran Sword Sect's side was greatly boosted, and their confidence was greatly boosted. On the other hand, the allied forces led by the opposing super sects were in low spirit. In the battle over the past month, the Haoran Sword Sect had used 400,000 people to fight against 1,200,000 enemies. However, they still managed to achieve a 1-4 victory. This caused all the forces who were paying attention to this battle to be shocked by the strength of the Haoran Sword Sect. This kind of strength had already surpassed the majority of the super sections. Even the Lingyun Hall and Sky Demon Temple, who were publicly recognized as the strongest super sects in the Central Plains, were only at this level. Lingyun Hall and Sky Demon Temple were the two most powerful super sects with the longest legacies among the super sections. Unlike the majority of the super sects that had their legacies from the modern era, Lingyun Hall and Sky Demon Temple had their legacies from the ancient era. They had a long history of more than 100,000 years, and their foundations were unfathomable. Even during normal times, they each had more than 700,000 disciples. Although on the surface, they only had a radius of 3,000 miles, in reality, the area they controlled and the various hidden forces were far more than that. Even the Zhou dynasty was very wary of Lingyun Hall and Sky Demon Temple. Although the strength displayed by the Haoran Sword Sect had shocked everyone through this battle, it was impossible for them to be comparable to Lingyun Hall and Sky Demon Temple. Not to mention other things, just the enemies that Yi Tianzong faced this time to attack the Haoran Sword Sect were mostly forces secretly supported by Lingyun Hall and Sky Demon Temple. The forces led by Medicine King Valley were only a small part of the forces. In the vast Central Plains, who knew how many first-rate, second-rate, and third-rate forces the Lingyun Palace and the Heavenly Demonic Palace were secretly supporting? After all, they were ancient forces that had existed for over 100,000 years. Who knew how many chess pieces they had hidden in the dark? In comparison, the Haoran Sword Sect, which had a legacy of less than 10,000 years, was much weaker. With Yi Tianzong's knowledge and experience, he was very clear about this. He wouldn't blindly believe that the rapid development of the Haoran Sword Sect in the short span of 10 years could compare to the true strength of the Sky Demon Temple and Lingyun Hall. Not to mention these two, even Zhenbu Gate, which was ranked at the bottom of the list of super sects, was estimated to be on par with the current Haoran Sword Sect. The geographical location of the Haoran Sword Sect and the Xian Nu Temple was rather awkward. Geographically, the Xian Nu Temple had its back against the Xian Nu mountain range, and was surrounded by Zhenbu Gate, Demon Sword Sect, Shura Sect, and Haoran Sword Sect. This eliminated the possibility of developing and supporting other forces. They could only hole up within a radius of 3,000 miles. Furthermore, their legacies were the shortest, so their strength was the weakest. In fact, in ancient times, the profound spirit world was much larger than it was now. The geographical location of the Xiannu Temple was also not the same as it was now. However, as time passed, the land moved and changed, and various forces constantly fought over it, resulting in this awkward location. Although the Haoran Sword sect was not completely surrounded by super-sects like the Xiannu Temple, it was still surrounded by Zhenbu Gate, Demon Sword sect, Shura sect, and other super-sections. The Haoran Sword sect was directly connected to the Xiannu Temple and Demon Sword sect. The other areas were surrounded by forces supported by super-sects, and there was no space for them to develop and support other forces. It could be said that most of the Haoran Sword sect's strength was on the surface, unlike other super-sects that had hidden forces that they supported in the dark. For example, other than gathering 300,000 people to attack the Haoran Sword sect, Zhenbu Gate was also in a state of war with the Xiannu Temple, Demon Sword sect, and Dry Bone Mountain. This did not even include their hidden forces. Every battle had hundreds of thousands of people, and it was clear that if Zhenbu Gate was serious, they definitely had the ability to gather more than 1 million people. This kind of strength could be said to be comparable to the current Haoran Sword sect. The reason why the Haoran Sword sect was able to stand strong in the past was that, other than their own strength, the various super-sects were restricting each other. They all had their own enemies that they had to guard against, and they were unable to divert much of their forces to deal with the Haoran Sword sect. The battle between the righteous and demonic paths this time was an opportunity for the various super-sects to continue suppressing the Haoran Sword sect. It was also an opportunity for the Haoran Sword sect to break through the blockade and support other forces. As long as they could survive this siege and kill their enemies, the Haoran Sword sect would be able to break through the blockade and expand their sphere of influence. This time, they had to succeed in their counterattack and establish the prestige of the Haoran Sword sect, expanding their sphere of influence. Only then would they be able to maintain a stable environment for the next 5 years and ensure that the plan would be carried out smoothly. Their strength, which had been stagnant for a long time, could once again increase. Lying on the bed, various thoughts flashed through Yi Tianzong's mind. In the end, he calmed down and fell asleep.